or asked for, and that is to move item 10.3 to immediately follow item 6. So it'll become the new 6.2. So that's 10.3, the Cops for Cancer Tour de Rock fundraiser, to move up to and become a 6.2. So I'll propose that as part of as us approving tonight's regular meeting. So moved by Councillor St. Pierre with that change and seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4 is adoption of meeting minutes. This is the regular meeting minutes from May the 13th, regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Thank you. All those in favor of adoption? And that's unanimous. Thank you. For number 5, public and statutory hearings, the first one up here is 5.1, and then we have 5.2. So public input will follow each of these items as they appear. So the first one, 5.1, is 1245 Silver Spray, a development variance permit. Turn this to staff, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this application is in relation to a development variance permit, 1245 Silver Spray Drive. Oh. Thank you. The subject property is a 4.7 hectare lot, which is hooked across Silver Spray Drive and Birdsong Lane into 3 sections. The 2 sections to the southwest include the location of a proposed 9-lot residential subdivision, and the larger section to the northeast is intended for a private septic disposal field. The property is otherwise Zone CD3, Area B of the Silver Spray Comprehensive Development Zone, permitting single-family residential and private utility use. On April 22nd, 2024, Council approved variances A and B and postponed consideration of variances C, D, and E to a subsequent meeting. Variance A varied section 3.24 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum building setback to steep slope from 15 meters to 0 meters in accordance with the geotechnical report recommendations to accommodate the proposed 9-lot subdivision. Variance B varied section 2.2A of the SDS bylaw to modify the required frontage improvements from the bylaw standard to a trail and parking area along a 160-meter section of Birdsong Lane. And proposed variances C, D, and E were also related to frontage variances along sections of Birdsong Lane, Silver Spray Drive, and Thornton Heights. However, the applicant has requested to withdraw variances D and E and proceed only with variance C. So for additional background, variances B through E were all related to varying road frontage improvements required as a condition of final subdivision approval under section 2.2A of the SDS bylaw. All roads fronting the subject property are classified as local urban suburban roads under the SDS bylaw. Given that variance B has already been considered by council and the applicant has requested to withdraw variances D and E, the remaining variance to be considered here as part of this application is variance C, which affects a 100-meter section of Birdsong Lane located between the proposed cul-de-sac and the Silver Spray Drive intersection. This slide provides a closer view of the 100-meter road section of Birdsong Lane subject to proposed variance C. This section of road is currently unconstructed, but is intended to serve as the primary access road for the proposed 9-lot subdivision. Yeah, sorry. The table provided on this slide includes comparison between the required and proposed cross-section components. The proposed modified cross-section reduces the total constructed width from a minimum 16 meters to 11 meters, essentially by reducing the width of the travel lanes from 4.25 meters to 3.5 and reducing the width of the boulevards from 2.7 meters to 1 meter. Components that are consistent between the required and proposed cross-sections include sidewalk, street trees, and streetlights. Also, the legal right-of-way width is maintained at 18 meters. However, outside of that 11-meter constructed platform, would be left unconstructed and contain rock cuts at some locations. Next slide, please. This slide indicates the required components of the local urban suburban standard. The red highlighted items are those being varied. And the proposed modified cross-section and its components is included here again. The red highlighted items are those being varied. And finally, a plan view of the proposed cross-section on the left, showing rock cuts on either side with fencing, and the local urban suburban cross-section from bylaw 404 on the right. Next one. Since the April 22nd council meeting, the applicant has elaborated on their rationale as requested by council. Their rationale argues that the proposed variance is required to reduce the amount of blasting. The road is anticipated to have a low traffic volume. Standard amenities are still being provided, including sidewalk, streetlights, curb and gutter. The full 18-meter road width right-of-way dedication is unchanged from the required. Proposed road is a similar width to what is currently existing on Silver Spray Drive at approximately 7 meters. And the applicant is also accepting of no parking signage and fencing at the top of the rock cut as recommended by staff and included in the alternate motion. In accordance with the Local Government Act and District Policy, 19 notices were mailed to adjacent property owners and occupants. No submissions were received. Staff recommend that council deny proposed variance C and that the applicant meet the required bylaw 404 cross-section. However, we have provided an alternative motion here that represents the applicant's proposed or request for proposed variance and minimum conditions recommended by staff, which the applicant is accepting of. And that's that council authorize the issuance of the development variance permit to modify the required road frontage improvements as proposed, subject to the installation of no parking signage and a 1.5 to 2 meter high fence along the top of the rock cut walls to the satisfaction of the municipal engineer. This concludes my presentation, but we do have the applicant who's in attendance and has a presentation here available as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me once again to discuss this project. I do have a very brief presentation just to add a little bit more detail to the very excellent staff presentation. Oh, look, it's being fancy. Oh, which way should I point it? Oh, there we go. So just a brief recap of the subdivision. Again, 9-lot strata subdivision with a remainder lot a little further up the road. So the lot itself being subdivided is what they call a hooked lot, where the same legal parcel exists in 2 different places nearby. And this is a little view of the property from the road looking down towards the ocean. So previously, and thank you very much for the variance to vary that portion of Birdsong Lane improvements that create the trail and the parking that go to the foreshore. Birdsong Lane is actually an existing road right of way. It was dedicated years ago. And this developer is actually adding to that with an additional road dedication. I think it's safe to say that if there wasn't public access on this road, it probably wouldn't be a public road. It would probably just be proposed to be a private strata road. But because it already exists as a public road, we're increasing the actual dedication to the required 18 meters and doing those improvements, particularly so people can get to and access the waterfront here. A little more detail on this particular piece of road. Again, it was already a dedicated road. It's in the location that it is. I don't know if you can see the upper right-hand profile of this road. There's a big rock lump in the way, which makes it difficult. You know, it is, yes, it's a lot of blasting. Yes, it's, you know, it is a money issue, but it's also a geotechnical issue, and I'll get to that in a moment. But again, you can also see that the profile of this road is about 12%. And with regard to parking on the road itself, it's actually a little bit steep. I know it can be done, but it's a little hard to get in and out of your car doors parking on a 12% grade. So that's part of the reason that we're comfortable asking for a reduced road width, because we don't anticipate people parking on this road on the way down. We are providing parking for the trail. There's a couple of additional parking spaces in the cul-de-sac, and these are large lots, and people will have lots of opportunity to park on their own properties for themselves and for guests. So you can see that, again, staff showed us this, these 2 sections for comparison, the one on the left being in accordance with bylaw 404. We still wish to do an urban standard here. It's just sort of a matter of trying to make it fit within the 18 meters that we have. Because of the slope of the rock on each side, it's a little hard to predict how the rock will break and how much slope we have to have from the top of the rock to the base of it in order to make it safe. And I'll just sort of click back there for a minute. In addition, the property on the north above the word Birdsong Lane actually doesn't belong to this developer, it belongs to our neighbor. So we can't sort of overblast and chip away into their property to make that slope safe. So you can see here, you know, we need a little bit of wiggle room to work with to get those rock faces to work. The road will be quite functional at 7 meters wide, and a slight correction. I think there was a request for mountable curb, and I think we do want non-mountable curb here. And what that means is a curb is a vertical face, so you can't roll over it and accidentally park on the sidewalk. So we will be doing non-mountable curb here. So that sort of protects the sidewalk and also pedestrians. And then it gives us room inside the boulevards to sort of work with the catchment area, work with the rock slopes. We do wish to provide decorative streetlights and also street trees in the boulevard that is available. So it will have an urban feel to it. Again, it just gives us a bit of flexibility to work within the 18 meters right away that we have. So available for any questions if you have any, and thanks again for having me this evening.
Okay, thank you for joining us tonight. Is Councillor McMath now in the meeting? Okay, I just wanted to check, and please let me know once she joins. Okay, so I'll ask council members if you have questions for either staff or for the applicant's representative. No? Okay, so I'd like to invite any members of the public that may wish to comment on this development variance. This opportunity would be specific for this application, and there's other public input opportunities to follow in the agenda. So specifically for 1245 Silver Spray.
Ellen Lures. I understood that there's also a variance for setback for a building. Is that not part of it?
Some of them have been addressed, and this is the only one that's in front of us tonight. Within the staff report, some other items will maybe come back to us later, and I think one has already been, this is the only one in front of us that we're deliberating on tonight.
Oh, because it says in the agenda, it says in there that setback for a building from 15 meters to 0 on a rock cliff.
Okay, that I'm just going with Councillor Bateman. It said has been dealt with already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been dealt with as in it's going to happen
Yes.
to 0. Oh, I'm just curious because I was thinking about earthquakes and I was wondering why we would build on the edge of a rock. Just a thought.
Yeah, that was variance A. So on the April 22nd meeting, that particular variance to vary was approved in accordance with the geotechnical report provided.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Lures. Any other comments from members of the public this evening on this particular variance application? Okay, Councillor McMath has joined us online. Councillor McMath, can you see us and hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Councillor McMath. You can see us and hear us then as well?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any questions, Councillor McMath, on this particular presentation? There's nothing from members of council at this time. Okay, so I'll return this back to council then. We've received our staff reports and their comments, as well as the applicant's submission and their rationale. Mainly it's due to the blasting and site topography and the like. The staff, you know, obviously are holding with the recommendation from before, but I proposed an alternative here as well. So, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, given the robust discussion that we had at the first meeting and then the withdrawal of the two the two other variances, as well as our workshop that we took place in last week where we discussed this specifically. I'll move the alternative recommendation. If I could get that on the screen, I'll read it out. You want me to read? Okay, that council authorized the issuance of DVP PLN 01689 variant C to vary section 2.2A of the subdivision development standard bylaw number 404, 2014 for the property legally described as Lot 1, Section 78, Sooke Land District Plan EPP 93249 in brackets 1245 Silver Spray Drive, to modify the required road frontage improvements along the 100-meter road section of Birdsong Lane from the local urban suburban cross section to include an 18-meter wide cross section that contains rock cuts, 3.5-meter wide travel lanes, non-mountable curb and gutter, 1 meter wide, boulevard, street light, street tries, and a 2.0-meter wide concrete. That's kind of a funny way to spell concrete. Sidewalk adjacent to the travel lane, subject to the installation of no parking signs within the right of way to prohibit on-street parking, and a 1.5 meter to 2.0 meter high fence along the top rock cut wall to the satisfaction of the municipal engineer prior to issuing the first building permit for a dwelling addressed on Birdsong Lane.
Okay, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Lajeunesse is seconding it. Okay. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Pearson?
No, I think we've debated this long and hard, and in April, as well as looked at the site. It's one of these wider to narrower, wider, and I think it's consistent with what's there. And I'm satisfied that that it's going to be done safely, and it's got the 18 meters in there, which we're requiring. It's just a little bit narrower of a roadway with no parking on it, so I think it fits within that development in that area, and it's exactly what we talked about at our workshop.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's a 100-meter long dead end road. There's not going to be a lot of traffic going to or from anywhere on that road. And I think by narrowing the cross section and minimizing the amount of blasting, I think it makes sense in that particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I disagree. I'll be voting against this motion. I like to go with the staff's recommendation. We pay staff a good deal of money to have a look at these things and make their recommendations, and they have. And I generally need a pretty good argument to vary from that when staff makes a recommendation. I go back to when the Transportation Master Plan was drafted. I remember attending those workshops, and I heard loud and clear about the width of roads and the problems we're having today with subdivisions that went in a decade ago being too narrow. And that's why this 404 was born. I agree that sometimes we apply it to areas where it doesn't make much sense, but in this case, it is a subdivision. It is a nine or seven, I can't remember at the moment, 9 unit subdivision. And this is exactly why this came up, 404. So, and there was a great deal of discussion on that. And I think that if we're going to have this bylaw 404 and that street design, when will it apply? Here's a case where there's a subdivision and it should apply there. And I'd like to see us stay with that line. I agree with some of the other things in our workshop. If you go down to some of the gateway things, doesn't make much sense down there. But over here, it is a new subdivision, and it's sort of their land. It's there to apply this to. So I will vote against it.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Beddoes, and I'll be voting against as well. I think this sets a precedent for every developer that wants to basically save on blasting to step forward with ideally a good rationale. You can often find a good rationale, but what it means is that we're actually ignoring our TMP, our OCP, and our staff's efforts to actually realize the vision of the community while keeping the community safe. Also, we're gonna end up we could end up with a patchwork, quilt work of road frontages that, nothing connects, nothing seems to fit together. This is not actually what the TMP or the vision of the community is. In principle, I actually approve of narrower roads, just to be clear. I actually think that has a traffic calming effect. And I think if we actually decided as council through the TMP that we want to narrow our roads and not allow parking, I would like that in some levels. But I know that we have people that are diligent. I will make sure we have enough parking. And that's not what we've decided as council. That's not our policy. If we ever want to make that a policy, let's talk about it then. But meanwhile, I think we actually have to stick together and not be put into the unenviable position of second guessing OCP, staff, TMP on a regular basis. That's their job.
Counselor Bateman?
Yeah, so I'll be voting in favor of the alternative motion. I feel this is just a little access road. It will be somewhat busy given the parking lot and that staircase down to the water, spectacular Sooke tourism highlight, possibly. We'll have to see how that works out. However, the rationale statements make perfect sense for this variance C. I'm very interested to see how we proceed with D and E. Of course, by then we will have clarity on the transportation master plan for that area. One thing I would love to see here in council is Mr. Thornton or Silver Spray representatives in the room to give us their update on short, medium, and longer term plans for Silver Spray. We know there's a marina coming. There was the golf course. I think some other big ideas. I know there's a new co-owner, a major new co-owner involved. It would be good to get that update so that we can be very clear on what the vision is for Silver Spray, whether it's to be a rural retreat that people might want to go to, or more of a upscale sort of situation where you would expect these kind of municipal cross sections.
Thank you. Counselor McMath, any comments? No. Okay, I won't be supporting this. Go ahead then.
Sorry, there's a lag here. Yeah, I echo Councillor Bateman's statements and to all the master documents, the OCP, the TMP, and the TMP that just sort of generally goes over the Silver Spray area. Those are guidance documents with long-term vision, but they're still living documents, and not every piece, not every section of Sooke will adhere to those generalized rules. So I think it's not so much as not listening to staff, as just fulfilling our duty and our obligation for these particular issues. So I'll be supporting the alternative motion.
Okay, thank you. I'll pause a bit the next time. I'm not in support of this. I think this is new infrastructure going into this area, so we don't know what's coming into the future, and this is where best practices prevail here. Is there any other comments that Councillor wishes to make for a second time before I call the question? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre, for a second time.
Just briefly, I'd like to point out that, and we already have an idea of how this is going to go, but we're also setting up a situation where there's going to be more work and more delays for everybody. This is really something we need to be careful about. If we allow this type of variance in this type of situation with a development on this scale, and let's be clear, there's no reason to believe in the future there won't be a lot of cars around that area, a lot of development. We don't know what's going to happen in the future there. That's why we have plans. That's why we actually try and make provisions for keeping people safe with proper sidewalks. This sidewalk is right beside the road. Let's see how it goes. But let's see how it goes is not really great when we're looking at people's safety. It's not really great when we're actually trying to plan for a built out future that probably includes a lot more people. I think it's important to actually make sure that we're not creating immense uncertainty in the development community and creating additional, honestly, opportunities for us to weigh in when the vision of the community is actually pretty clear.
Okay, thank you. I will call the question then. So the second alternative motion, or the alternate motion, is live. So I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And Councillor McMath, I see your hand. Opposed then is Councillor Beddoes, St. Pierre, and myself, so that passes. And that's it. So thank you for your patience, and that's democracy, and we'll see where the rest lands in the future. Okay, we'll move on to our next one, which is 7059 Briarwood Place.
I am going to recuse myself as a near neighbor of the property, living within 100 meters of the property. However, I did not receive the notification. I'll just let you know that.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Will you just be in the hallway?
Yeah.
Okay, we will find you. Thank you. Okay, I'll turn this over to staff, please. And Councillor Bateman, if you could just pull that door closed. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This agenda item is in regard to a development variance permit at 7059 Briarwood Place. The subject property is a 2013 square meter parcel located in the middle of Briarwood Place, a dead end street. The property is within the Whip and Spit neighborhood and has approximately 35 meters of road frontage. Property zone RU4 or rural residential and has a land use designation of community residential. An existing dwelling with a legal secondary suite are currently contained on the property. This application is requesting a development variance permit to vary Schedule 3, Section 24 of the Subdivision and Development Standards bylaw to allow for a second driveway. The rationale for a second driveway is to accommodate an elderly parent with developing mobility issues to otherwise avoid the steep concrete stairs located on the property required to access the suite. This slide displays the ortho image of the subject property on the left and the site plan provided by the applicant on the right. As noted on the site plan, the concrete stairs are located at the rear southwest corner of the dwelling, which are required to access the suite due to elevation changes of the site. The approximate location of the proposed second driveway would be opposite to the existing driveway and run along the east side of the existing dwelling. This would allow for access to the suite entrance at grade. Due to the septic field located in the front yard, extension of the driveway to meander to the east side of the dwelling is not feasible. Sorry. This slide provides additional context related to the accessibility of the suite. The pictures here show the concrete stairs located at the front and southwest corner of the building, as well as the suite access to the rear. As noted, the SDS bylaw Schedule 3, Section 24 limits the number of driveways to a residential property to 1 per road frontage. This is the section, again, that's proposed to be varied. In review of the application, the engineering division noted that roadside parking would not be significantly impacted by the installation of a second driveway and therefore had no concerns with the variance request, subject to the following conditions. That the driveway width be between 4.5 and 6 meters. A driveway culvert is installed to match the size of the upstream culvert. The driveway is to be hard surfaced, asphalt, concrete, or brick paver from road edge to property line. And that a highway use permit is required with all other bylaw for driveway requirements to be met. Kind of in response to Mr. Beddoes, in accordance with the district policy and local government act, 7 notices were delivered to adjacent properties. Notification is limited to adjacent properties, not within the 100-meter radius. No written submissions have been received. Staff recommend that council authorize the issuance of this development variance permit to allow for the construction of a second driveway subject to the listed conditions as recommended by the engineering division. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the staff report. Before I go to members of the public, I'll just ask if there's any questions that council has of the staff report. Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report, and through the chair to you, to our Mr. Roddy. Would this be considered a minor variance in the future?
Based on the draft bylaw? I don't believe so. No, not based on the criteria. Yeah, I think it would be limited to those occurring on the premises, not servicing related variances. Yes.
Yeah, just kind of
trying
to get a sense of where. Sorry, I'm just trying to get a sense of where we're going in general, and not specifically to this case, but as we get these variances that are coming up, I just want to ask that question.
That's correct. You'd have to meet the eligibility criteria currently in the draft bylaw. But in this case, I think it would separate itself as it's a servicing related variance, not necessarily under the zoning bylaw.
Thank you for the answer.
And just to clarify there, the servicing is because it's a driveway or what? I don't understand
Yeah,
that piece.
sorry, servicing as it relates to the SDS bylaw, the subdivision development standards bylaw.
That sort of went, that all went right over my head. Like, I don't get why it's not
Yeah,
minor.
so variances related to the zoning bylaw or like setbacks, for example. There's a separate bylaw that's related to servicing standards, which this is what is being proposed to be varied. So a second driveway lives in that servicing standards bylaw, which is being varied here.
I see. Okay. Other questions from members of council? Okay, I'll invite any members of the public that are present that would like to comment on this particular application, specifically 7059 Briarwood Place. Okay, see no comments from the public, that's fine. I'll turn this back to council to consider. Councillor Beddoes, please.
Yeah, I'm willing to make a motion at this time if there's no other questions. That council authorize the issuance of development variance permit PL 01833 to vary Schedule 3, Section 24 of the subdivision of development standards bylaw number 404 for the property legally described as Lot 16, Section 6, Sooke Land District Plan VIP 344867059 Braywood Place to allow for the construction of a second driveway subject to the following conditions. Do I have to read the conditions? All right, one, driveway width of secondary driveways separate from the existing to be between 4.5 and 6 meters wide. Driveway to include culvert to match size and of upstream culvert or 300 millimeters, whichever is larger, complete with head walls. Driveway to be hard surface, asphalt, concrete, or brick paver from road edge to property line, and a highway use permit be required with all other SDS bylaw number 404 driveway requirements to be met. That's my motion.
So that's moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any comments, Councillor Beddoes?
No, I think this is one that not a minor variance, but it's I can see the rationale behind it. Makes sense to me. Thanks.
Councillor Pearson?
Nope.
Okay. Any comments from any other members of council? I'll just add I'm in full support of this, and just a takeaway for myself is in the future, where and how can we accommodate considerations like this? Because the way we're living is going to continually change. In this case, this is to address accessibility. It's for a family to be together, all of which I can see happening, continuing on to the future. We may also see septic fields decommissioned and join the sewer specified area, in which case another unit may be added to a building that currently doesn't have a suite. So what does it look like to enable folks to age in place or to provide housing stock where it's needed? So I just don't know where that would fit. So I'll leave that comment in the hands of our staff. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And Councillor McMath, I didn't hear from you, so I'm assuming you're in favor, and that's fine.
I am.
We'll have Councillor Bateman is joining us back into the room. And I'll like to invite our first delegation up this evening, which is 6.1, which is Wildwise. Please turn on the microphone. Thank
There we
you.
go. No worries. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me today. My name is Molly Cameron. I took over as president of Wildwise back in September. So my reason for wanting to meet with you guys today was more so to thank you for your ongoing support from the district. Funding from you guys allows us to provide educational materials to the community and help mitigate human-wildlife conflicts. Which unfortunately can sometimes lead to animals losing their lives. And so providing community education is a great way to mitigate those things from happening. Zoom in a bit. Oh, okay. Oh, no, I'm sorry about that. Okay, thank you. That's okay. Can you go up one? So ongoing initiatives that we have, continuing with our barren area signage, wildlife crossing signage where it's needed, door-to-door education with reporting noncompliance of attract and securement now to bylaw, since you guys have introduced that bylaw, which is really lovely. Community and school presentations, market presence, marine mammal rescue assistance. So we transport orphaned harbor seals to Harbor Air, then they go to Vancouver Aquarium. We've also babysat a troublesome elephant seal in the last few months. I'm sure you guys have heard about him. And then wildlife monitoring. So we have our purple martin boxes down at the Prestige, and then we also monitor predator presence in neighborhoods and trying to pick certain times of year where increased conflicts may occur. And then if you go down, it's just an example of our signage that you guys help fund, which we're so appreciative of. And then go down a little bit more. So yeah, unsecured garbage remains one of the biggest contributors to human wildlife conflicts in Sooke. Last year, we lost 4 adult bears in Sooke. They were food conditioned and habituated, causing property damage to residents or continuously getting into garbage. Those incidents, securing our garbage is the best way to keep bears safe. Human wildlife conflicts often start with the public and can stop with public responsibility. So we really can't thank you enough for implementing that bylaw. We can't make everybody love wildlife, but everybody does care about their own money. So introducing that was really monumental. And yeah, this bylaw still allows education to be the first step. So Wildwise will go visit residents on 2 occasions, and then bylaw will go issue a ticket on the 3rd occasion, which provides an opportunity. And I think people deserve, because a lot of people move here and they really don't know how much wildlife is around us. Other things that we provide education on besides garbage, bird feeders, beehives, ripe fruit. We still do our fruit exchange program, feeding pets inside, securing pet food inside, as well as securing livestock. That is also a big contributor to human wildlife conflicts. And then if you go down a bit, and then over the last little bit, we've conducted quite a few local presentations, as well as school presentations at John Muir, Poirier, Sooke Hartwood Learning Community School, and EMCS. And then we've also done community presentations at the Sooke Museum, as well as the Sooke Library. And then if you go down, and I don't know why the words aren't showing up, but we're very lucky to have the BC Conservation Officer Service present along with us. They provide a perspective of human wildlife conflicts that we simply don't have the experience or knowledge in. So it's really great to have their perspective on things as well. And then if we go down again, and then yeah, market presence. So just having our presence along with other booths to provide education allows us to engage with the public and perhaps have conversations that sometimes we don't get to have. And then, yeah, like I said, we assist with marine mammal rescues, sending animals to the Vancouver Aquarium, as well as last year we did actually help relocate this troublesome elephant seal, Emerson, and he ended up in Oak Bay this year, but our volunteers went out and we were keeping a close eye on him. We are working with the Department of Ocean Fisheries to create signage for the Prestige Hotel to encourage respectful behavior of pinnipeds with tourists, as well as locals during pupping season specifically. And then in terms of wildlife monitoring, we obviously monitor areas for conflicts, but this is a project that I started on my own that's kind of rolled into Wildwise. So it monitors cougar sightings and conflicts to provide a better understanding of cougar education, since they are one of the more elusive animals that we have here in Sooke. This map is actually color coordinated by year. Each pin is a date involving information about the sighting, and then each X is an animal that has been destroyed either by hunting or conflicts from BC Conservation Officer Service, and stars are conflicts that have involved pets or livestock. And then just some examples of education we provide, how to stay bear safe. So staying inside, avoiding its path. If you see one roaming around, back away slowly, don't run. Bears can run 48 kilometers an hour. That's not a race that anyone in Sooke is going to win. And then using the buddy system when hiking, carry bear spray for emergencies, make lots of noise, scare the bear away. And then we just like to reinforce the fact that wildlife makes incredible efforts to avoid humans and conflict with humans. But if we are providing opportunities for them to get themselves in trouble, that increases our chances of having conflicts. Just more examples of education, securing livestock, bringing free roaming cats indoors, keeping dogs on leash, supervising children. And then we do encourage residents to call the BC Conservation Officer Service if there is an animal providing a threat to public safety.
We're just at time,
Oh,
so I'm
sorry.
going to just ask Councillor Bateman.
5 minutes, please.
Okay, is approved in another 5 minutes and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you.
So sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll refresh the time.
Like to think I talk fast and then go down again. Education doesn't stop with just attractant securement. We do like to provide an understanding of animals as a whole. So providing education about bear body language, especially to students in schools. We live in such a urban setting that backs into such a rural setting that it is important to provide an understanding of animals that we may encounter in our communities. And then if we go down a little bit more, so promoting peaceful coexistence through other opportunities, engaging the public, wolves specifically, presenting our physical being with wolves can cause them to become accustomed to our presence and let their natural guard down. That goes for all predators. And then just, information about the animals in general. Wolves are not a protected species in British Columbia, so they can be legally hunted without any species license. And then posting location of, any predator does aid individuals with ill intentions and potentially puts animals in danger, though there are, limits that we have to cross to create public awareness of where animals might be. But we do provide education, encouraging people to be ready to coexist at all times and not exclusively when sightings are posted. And then just a little thing that I included in here about truths and myths about calling with BC Conservation Officer Service that we do like to provide to the public as well. So conservation officers respond to calls that are made by the public. They can't just go out and respond to things because they feel like it. Not every call will warrant a response. Not every call results in the fatality of an animal. There needs to be a risk to public safety involved. Human-wildlife conflicts, like I said, start and can stop with the public. And then education is the first step that they take unless there is a risk to public safety. That's where we come in. We maintain a working relationship with them. So if there's areas that are experiencing conflict, they let us know where to go, and we go educate those residents to hopefully change behaviors of both the public and the animals. Relocation is not always an option. There are stipulations to that. And then only cubs of the year, which means cubs that have emerged for the first time from the den that year, are eligible to go to rehab. Second year cubs are not eligible to meet that criteria. And then managing attractants truly does save bears' lives. Again, they're animals of opportunity. All predators are. And if we're not providing opportunities, there's no, typically it mitigates the conflict. And then goals that we have for the future, we would like to see a year with no bear deaths. We are currently working with staff to organize a Wildwise in the Park Day, as well as Wildwise presence down at the Sooke River during the salmon spawn to provide education. We'd like to do an event at EMCS with electric fencing demonstrations, as well as presentations to the public. tourism brochures to encourage best practices for guests visiting our town, respectful viewing or designated viewing areas during the salmon run. This is a really big thing. And I mean, in previous years, I myself have gone down there, but when we're getting crowds of 14, 20 people watching one bear and it's changing that bear's behavior and it's not feeding properly, that can influence the bear to not go into hibernation if they haven't gotten enough food. All bear species have delayed implantation. So when they mate, the embryo actually doesn't form unless that mother has found enough food to eat to survive throughout the winter. And if she doesn't, then that embryo will actually just be reabsorbed. So we potentially are affecting the bear population if bears are not finding adequate food to survive through hibernation. We also are working to obviously create a community understanding of respecting wildlife opposed to fearing it. We want to provide an understanding. We don't want all this fear running around. I mean, the predators obviously are capable of doing damage, but if we're respectful to each other, it typically doesn't end in those results. And then working with bylaw and getting more compliance with garbage securement, which has been lovely. Protecting wildlife corridors from development, enhancing wildlife monitoring to provide the best public understanding available, and then continuing relationships with the district, bylaw, RCMP, and BC Conservation Officer Service to protect the wildlife that roam into our communities. And then just a little thank you. We have lots of volunteers that are super grateful for your support. And then I'm happy to take any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation and your time with us here today. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I don't know if you can really answer this question, but earlier this year, I had a phone call from a neighbor and there was some blasting going on up at it's in the Sooke district, but it's just on the border with Otter Point. And the neighbor is very concerned because the blasting knocked some bears out of their den.
Okay.
And the den, of course, they're out at not a great time of year where there's very little food for them. And she's very concerned about them not surviving. I realize we don't have anything in the bylaws that's saying, once they have a building permit, if they blast, they blast. But I thought that was interesting that, and I know the bears, I see these bears, they're on my porch every day. I'm trying to get them off, but have you run into that before? Is there any sort of, in the outlying districts, any restrictions on blasting that you've ever heard of?
It's not something that I've ever encountered before. Anytime development or blasting is proposed, I always, as a civilian, recommend doing an environmental impact study to see what kinds of things might be in those areas before the habitat's destroyed. Because if it is, I thought that a bear den was protected against the Wildlife Act, but I think I may be mistaken, but it is a suggestion.
Sure.
So the Wildlife Act is currently up for review, provincial legislation. So that could be a recommendation that those areas are protected. But if there is even endangered plants or other species in those areas where they're blasting, it could be protected, but I don't believe that dens are.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it to your attention because you're in the loop with these other organizations. And it might be something that's worth talking about for the future because it was a very real thing. They did get bumped out of two of them, two young from last year. And, I saw.
It's certainly on my radar. I think I need connections a little bit higher than what I have.
Just for information. And thank you for what you do for the community. I think in our community, Sooke, there are bears everywhere. And it's been a tough lesson for me. I can show you some pictures of where I keep my garbage and the holes they've chewed in trying to get to it. And I got it like a fort now.
Yeah.
They can get through there. Well, I don't do raspberries anymore. The Cubs came through last year and they just devastated my raspberry crop. And I thought, well, they need to eat too. So guess what? It's theirs.
Absolutely. And the destruction to your bins, it's not something that typically happens overnight. Those are escalations in behavior to get to a point where they destroy things.
Of where they cut a hole in it. And I thought I built this thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong.
I'd love to see it. They're very strong.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. But anyways, I appreciate what you do in the community, and it's something we have to learn to live with. And education is the number one. And
Thank you.
I know for me and my home, And I got feral cats and I'm out there bringing the food in before they can come around. And sometimes I don't make it and he's 2 feet from my back window there looking at me.
Yeah.
I like them, but
Yeah.
they can be scary. I looked at his claws today. He's just last year's cub, but he's getting pretty big.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to tackle him. All right, thanks.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you.
Counselor St. Pierre, then Pearson.
Wow, where to start? Totally appreciate the work done in terms of actually, especially keeping the attractants down and providing public education in schools and so on and so forth. My experience with bears has been not necessarily optimal at all times. I've had good experiences and bad.
Mhm.
So having a couple of our pigs basically taken was a bad experience. Having a habituated bear have to be put down because, and that poor bear had been eating tin cans and so on and so forth. That was obvious from what was left behind.
Yeah.
So that was a very badly damaged bear. I guess what I'm curious about is long-term, I see challenges with food security. Councilor Beddoes can't have his raspberries and so on and so forth. And not everyone can afford the electrics. So I have concerns in terms of just how do we cohabitate and still have enough, we'll still grow food for our own food resilience. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I'd love to hear what they are.
Yeah. My thoughts have been passed down by a lovely mentor that I have. And, you know, back in the day, banks didn't have to worry about cybersecurity. I think a long time ago, with the way that communities treated predators, it has really evolved. And so coexistence is quite a demand now. I do understand, you know, growing food for our own sustenance, but I think that if we are going to take those measures, that we do need to consider securing those attractants. So I understand that electric fencing may be an obstacle financially. You know, I would love to see a point where we could, you know, help people get grants or funding to have those things accessible to them while also still being able to coexist with the wildlife that, you know, ultimately it was their home first. And I think we definitely have respect for our wild neighbors because our history has not had very much respect for our wild neighbors in the past. You know, I remember, well, I haven't lived here in the 90s, but in the 90s, predators were shot on sight, you know, if they were killing livestock or affecting farming. And we've come a long way from that. And I'd love to not see us go back the other direction due to human conveniences.
Counselor Pearson.
Thank you. And, you know, opening up to say thank you for the great work that you're doing in our community. You know, I see the signs everywhere and I know that somehow you're behind those signs and I do appreciate it. So I have a couple of questions. The first one is through the chair to you is you mentioned something about second-year cubs can't be rehabilitated. So if their mother was killed on the highway, what happens to a second-year cub?
Well, typically second-year cubs, mom will leave them in June, July, and she'll go off and mate. And those cubs, if there's more than one of them, may stay together for a few months. But ultimately, they would be left to their own devices. So yeah, only cubs that are emerging from the den for the first time are eligible to go to rehab.
Okay, so in your opinion, are they at increased risk then in our community for looking for easy food sources if somebody left their garbage in?
Potentially. There's a lot of complexities involved in that. Animals are individuals. If they've had a really good mother to teach them natural forage, more than likely they'll result to those things. If they've had a mother that has been accessing garbage or other attractants that the public has provided, they may result to those things. As animals of opportunity, if attractants are available, they may also result to those things. The biggest factor in this is not providing those attractants. So bears are a lot like toddlers. If if a toddler's playing with a toy and it's working really well, there's no problem. If a toddler picks up a toy and it's not working at all right away, they're not going to put a lot of time into that toy. They're going to move on to the next thing. If it's been working all along and then all of a sudden it stops working, they're probably going to put a lot more effort into trying to get it to work again. It essentially goes hand in hand with bears without insulting them, calling them toddlers.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And my next question is going to be down the political path. It's unfortunate, you know, we get segments and presentations when we don't make the schedule up. And so we had a presentation, I think, at the last council meeting. I'm sure you're probably aware. So, and I don't want to put you on the spot and don't answer anything that you don't feel comfortable, but we were requested, and I think I may have missed some of the nuances of what was being requested. And we've got a letter subsequent to that, asking for oversight by over the conservation services. We're kind of in that, you know, we're a municipal level government. That's you know, that's the government. We think things are safe. Do you have an opinion about oversight on particularly around the destruction of any wildlife, not just bears? I know bears become our focus and, you know, maybe your expertise, but how do you feel about that request for us to get involved, or anybody get involved in government or an oversight body in the destruction of wildlife?
So in terms of that motion specifically, it is a conflict of interest for me. I really can't say very much. I'm the wildlife specialist at Pacific Wild. I'm also the president of Wildwise. They're two different organizations with two different objectives. As the president of Wildwise, I maintain a working relationship with the conservation officers. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on that motion.
I anticipated that answer. That's why my big preface. Okay. It's just that I feel myself personally, I may have missed that point. Like, you know, there's so much to take in. You know, we've got farm, we've got public, we've got all these things, and, you know, and the attractants. And then the bear often, in this case, we're trying to say the bear often pays the price for our mistakes. And in some cases, and I just don't know if that, I don't know where that lies. I'm not sure that I have a comfort level with no oversight when firearms. And I mean, I know there's other methods, but I'm troubled by that actually. So.
In terms of animals being destroyed, I can't speak to that on behalf of Wildwise. So again, this is a publicly caused issue. We are providing opportunities for behaviors to escalate and then becoming risks to public safety, and ultimately those animals are losing their lives. We don't want to see that, but we are very grateful to have a working relationship with the conservation officers because they too do not want to see that. And so we work with them to, you know, try and encourage behavior to change again among the public and among wildlife. Animals are individuals just like people. It's not any one number of times before behavior escalates to a point where, you know, an animal may be a risk to public safety. And so that's why, you know, eliminating those opportunities as a whole is really instrumental in being able to coexist and ultimately avoiding that essentially need for the officers to step in and you know, to kill those animals, because we're providing opportunities again for behavior to escalate. And like I explained with the toddler thing, you know, they start taking the garbage on a rural property not close to people, and then all of a sudden there's lots of garbage available in this neighborhood, and they're learning that that's a source of food, and they're just continuously returning to that source of food. Same goes for cougars with livestock. I mean, last year 55 sheep and 6 goats were killed over a span of 3 months. You know, there were many opportunities for everybody to change their behavior before those animals lost their lives. And so I think if we, you know, change our behaviors, ultimately we can exist with wildlife. One of my favorite things is animals have adapted with no choice but to live among humans. And as humans, we have a choice to ensure that animals can live among us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Ms. Cameron. I know you spoke at the CRD Environmental Services and the board, because they're bringing forward, or they're beginning to investigate a model bylaw for CRD municipalities, an optional bylaw that we can adopt to prevent garbage habituation. That would clearly be a good step forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So back to what Councillor Pearson was talking about earlier, and thank you for the diplomatic responses. And you know, of course, this is arising from North Vancouver, the district of, and they passed their resolution seeking independent body to provide oversight of conservation services, mandating the use of body cameras to rebuild public trust. And with their observation is that conservation officers, even though they have police-like powers under the Police Act, are not subject to police-like independent oversight. So that's the question.
Why are we discussing this wildlife presentation?
Okay, can you,
Well, I can.
Wildlife said they can't comment.
Yeah.
okay, if you can.
Yeah, I'll
frame
just
your
follow
point.
up at the meeting 2 weeks ago. We did discuss the fact that Molly was coming to us tonight, and we would continue the conversation. And so I am leading in my long and winding way to reach some sort of place of comfort, because we have received a very substantial piece of correspondence on the subject, urging us to bring forward a resolution. And
So what I would recommend that you do, just what mindful of the time, is that bring the notice of motion forward. We still have time.
notice of motion forward. I
Okay,
was just going to conclude by stating that we will have the resolution at UBCM
okay.
for those of us in attendance to vote upon. Okay, finally, I wanted to raise, I love that cougar map that you showed us. Is there a comparable map for bears?
In the process.
Okay.
There's a lot more data to sort through. But yes, we are working on it.
We have certain residents are absolute habitual offenders, are they
Correct.
not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these maps-
Hopefully with bylaw fines, we can maybe correct that behavior. Typically, I can't speak for all volunteers, but I do encourage this behavior when we go out. I keep a comprehensive list. So we go to every address. I write down if there are bins outside or other attractants that they had. If I had a conversation with them, if I wasn't able to, in the education that I left behind, that then is being sent now to your bylaw office, as well as CCing the conservation officer. So there is potential for them obviously to be fined through the district now, but also against the Wildlife Act too, if people are really not being compliant.
And my final question, thank you, it regards funding. So here at the District of Sooke, we contribute $7,000 a year to your larger budget. I know you also have contracts with Campbell River and I think CRD, East Sooke, perhaps, Shirley, Otter Point. Is everyone contributing enough to the pot, or can we advocate to these other municipalities to say, come on, step up?
I would love that. To be frank with you guys, I am, as the president, I am extremely busy. I know this is a role that Sam was extremely busy in as well. Going forward, I would love to see this as some type of paid position where I can really dedicate the time needed to address these conflicts and to really get compliance with people and have more meaningful conversations, because I do work full time, and then I also work about 20 to 30 hours a week on wildlife stuff. So yeah, it's a full-time position, but I am really passionate about it, and I am happy to do it as a volunteer, but to dedicate the time needed to really inflict a meaningful change, it would be helpful to make this a paid role.
Okay, thank you very much for your time with us today. Appreciating all the work that both yourself and your predecessors have done. 4 adult bears last year is still 4 too many. However, when I was elected, we were about 40 bears a year. So because of the work that's happening and the awareness around the community, it's a dramatic improvement, although it's still too many. I'll just share that that's a stat that should be shared with the public, when they're available, and along with the mapping and what the layers mean. It's a bit hard to see in the graphics, but maybe at the markets and the like. I think the big change has been the educational component, not just with residents, but certainly with schools. And the children are bringing that change. They're adults now. The ones that were 5 when this work started are now independently on their own, and they are coexisting, many in their own homes, and are finding different ways. So I think that's where we'll see the coexisting is coming in the generations to follow, but it's led by the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing with us.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you in the summer. Okay. We'll move on to our next item that we moved up, and that's 6.2, which is the Cops for Cancer Tour de Rock fundraiser, Guns versus Hoses request. So thank you for being with us today. Council, in your materials, you'll find this is 10.3.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, this was and just,
Sir, can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm
to us for
sorry.
the
I'm
record?
Constable Mary Ellen Somerville. I'm riding with the 2024 Tour de Rock team. And we raise funds for Cops for Cancer, which in turn raises funds for pediatric cancer research and Camp Good Times with a 50-50 split to both programs.
Excellent. So I can see the report that's staff put a report in front of us here. So we have a big event to look forward to in June, I believe.
Yes, on
which is
June
exciting.
23rd.
And I just had one question here. I mean, it all is fairly straightforward. What is the spinning? What is the spinning challenge? I don't
Okay.
understand that.
So, you know, the kids put their head on the bat and they have to spin and then they have to run the bases. I'm dizzy after one. So, it's between the different innings, we're gonna have fun games. So maybe a watermelon eating contest. I have a few other games planned, like a tiny tot tee off where the little 1 and 2-year-olds hit the ball and there's just gonna be like prizes for the kids. And then there's going to be like the home run championship, which will be open to all ages. And I'm planning to have a carnival on the soccer fields as well as the baseball game. There's a whole lot of moving pieces right now, but one of the biggest pieces is funding the insurance, funding the licenses, funding the inflatables, lots of funding.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. And I understand now why that particular item is just for the 8 to 10-year-olds.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
No, that
No.
would,
I also want to get mascots to have like a mascot dance off and a home run race. And there's going to be all sorts of fun and it's going to be something for all ages. I think it's going to be a great event.
no, it sounds like a great event. Okay, is there any questions from members of council? There's quite a description within here and where the funding is and where it's coming from. But since we do have our requester here, is there anything specific that you would like to know? No? Okay, so I'm trying to move us along because I hear about
Okay.
the late hour all the time from counselors, so let's tighten up here. That is that council provide a sponsorship to the Cops for Cancer Tour de Rock fundraiser event, Guns versus Hoses, in the amount of 1,000, with the funds to come from the sponsorship budget. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We will see you there. Good luck.
Great.
And thank you for all you're doing to
Your
support
worship,
this
can I
cause.
just have a moment. I was just gonna say that Cops for Cancer are doing a jail-a-thon again this year, so you're liable to find yourself arrested in the next couple of months. Just
August 24th.
I may find myself, well, I'm going out of town, so.
Not August 24th, you're not.
There's other counselors here, Olivia.
Okay.
And the judge is very understanding.
It wasn't the last time. I got stuck in there.
It'll be
Anyway,
fun.
thank you
Thank
and
you.
good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to item 7, please, which is report of the Chief Administrative Officer. Just Ryan from our IT, or actually, no,
Thank you. On that vein, in the interest of time, I won't read everything in the report. However, just wanted to highlight a couple things. On Wildfire Preparedness Day is Sunday, June 2nd from 11 till 1 at the Stickleback Urban Trailhead near Journey Middle School on Ponds Park Corridor. Various other events, and June will bring the Guns and Hoses event too, which I'm sure will be a fun event. On the HR side, we have Auxiliary Bylaw Officer Wade, who joined us on May 13th, and it was really nice. This is the first time I saw three bylaw officers walking around Municipal Hall earlier last week. So we're getting there. We're getting there. So it was nice to see that, providing that service and the bylaw vehicles out and about in the community on a daily basis now, which is great. We were lucky to find General Support Clerk, Alexis, who has joined us on May 21st. So you'll see her new face at the front there. And we're still recruiting more Parks Auxiliary laborers. However, we do have Carson Hadley, who's joined us on May 13th as well. Currently, we are interviewing the wastewater lead operator, director of financial services, and the senior planner. Which is nice. That list is shrinking, so we are filling some much needed vacancies here, and yeah, really excited for the new team and the energy that we've got going here. On the communications front, lots of stuff going on. The closure of Charters Road, of course, is the most current event occurring there. So I appreciate it can be probably a bit troublesome to the school children that use that road. However, short-term pain, long-term gain. We are trying to make that a safer road and commute for walkers, bikers, and vehicles down the road here. The other piece I just wanted to touch on was we've just seen some communication going out from our MLA, Ravi Parmar, who is working or joining with BC Transit to do a town hall June 4th, 6:30 to 8 at the Langford Business Center. And they are talking all things BC Transit. So we'll encourage anyone listening who can attend to go and share your concerns or your desires for the future of BC Transit, specifically for the Sooke region here. I will leave that there, I believe, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of our CAO? Okay, motion then that council receive the report of the Chief Administrative Officer for information. Let's move by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by La Jeunesse. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move into item 8, which is our public question and comment period. So this will be for all items on the agenda except for the 2 variance permits that we've just heard and worked through, because those had their own dedicated public input provided. So it's on all other items. If you could please come forward and introduce yourself, let us know your name, where you live, not your address, but your local government where you reside. And if you could let us know which agenda item you're speaking to, that would be helpful so we can frame and just hear you better. Thank you. And please just turn on the microphone. And when you start to speak, then the timer will count down from 2 minutes.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. Just speaking as a follow-up to the black bear conflict and the report from Wildlife Sooke and Ms. Cameron's comments, as well as what we heard tonight from councillors. I just would like to reiterate in terms of the information that I did provide in the letter that you've all received. Thank you. To respectfully ask that you reconsider your support for a similar resolution and follow the lead of North Vancouver in terms of looking for an oversight body for the conservation officer services. I think it's an opportunity for Sooke to show leadership. We are certainly in a community in British Columbia that we do have conflict. And I think a lot of times, conservation are very good. We know they have a good working relationship. But one day those conservation officers that have caused problems across the province could be your conservation officer in Sooke. So looking to the future, I think it's important that we do have oversight. And I would ask you to respectfully reconsider a motion down the road before UBCM as a community to support the resolution as North Vancouver has. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and as well as your letter. It's just with the correspondence, when it comes to members of council, it's on one of us to forward it to info so it goes through to the agenda. In this case, we may have been a bit late in doing so, so the letter will come to the next regular meeting, but we have received it at the same time.
And just in fairness, the gal who answered the phone when I called in, maybe didn't realize I just followed up where I was directed to, which was to council and not info, but very polite today, very apologetic. And so these things happen. I know that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other members of the public that wish to address council tonight? Oh my goodness.
My name is Nancy Chu from Sooke. Agenda item will be 10.2, the new community gardening Sooke. Mayor, Sooke councillor and staff, fellow Sooke residents, I have a little story from Joe to share with you. Joe just drove home from after a long day of work. Joe is exhausted, frustrated with the brutal traffic today. But there's something that makes Joe happy. Joe just got into the new community garden. He is going to drop by, give his tomatoes a good drink of water. He's going to chat with his community plot neighbors, and he is going to grab the leeks and the lettuce the wife requested this morning. Joe finished his 20 minutes in the community garden. He is driving home with a smile on his face. He has the image of his little 4 years old opening the door. Oh my God, Dad, how are we going to eat all this? Don't worry, honey. Bring them to school. Share with your friends. What we are asking here today is local food security. We're asking for productive green space. We're asking for community well-being. 16 years ago, I was privileged to be granted a little community garden plot called my own, where I felt safe, where I learned, where I shared with fellow community garden members the knowledge of growing tomato, zucchini, and all of that, where I relaxed, where I had fun. In conclusion, on behalf of Joe, Joanne, or Johanna, and their families out there, thank you for supporting the community garden. And this is how much I harvested in the 3 square space 10 minutes before 7 today. This is how much green you can grow. You're all welcome to one. I have 13, so Jeff, maybe you can skip that. Go to Costco, right? And by the way, Joe promised me to remind you guys that he really need a parking space at the new community garden. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation today. I'll just ask you to hold on clapping. We create a neutral environment, so but feel free to clap a lot outside. Okay, other speakers this evening that would like to address council? Just need to turn on the microphone.
Every time. You think I'd learn? Good evening, council and staff. My name is Levi Megenberg. I'm a resident of Sooke here, also a member of Transition Sooke and Sooke Foodchi. I just wanted to speak in reference to agenda item 10.2 as well, the Sooke Community Gardens. First of all, huge thanks to council and staff, in particular Emma Taylor and Christina Moog, for all the fantastic support you've provided on this project to date. We couldn't be where we're at today without all of the work and dedication that you've provided. I also just wanted to express hope that council will support the 2 motions that staff are putting forward today, and potentially even upgrade the second motion after discussion to potentially be a little more definite with that motion. I just wanted to say that Transition Sooke and Sooke Foodchi are really looking forward to being involved in the public engagement process, which is one of the key next steps. We're committed, and we're looking forward to continuing to support council and staff on bringing this vital initiative forward into reality. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Ellen Lewis, I too would like to speak on behalf of the community gardens and the support, and also support for farmers, but also in regard to the animals and the conflict with farming and gardens. It's very serious. I think that consideration has to be taken and how we can handle this. I mean, our community gardens, we have a huge fence around, and we have electric fence around our apple orchard, but keeps the bears out most of the time, but the raccoons come in. So and as a farmer, the cost is astronomical to try to keep these animals out. And so it's, there has to be a balance. We've had bears come in and take our chickens, and I know that some farmers have lost their pigs and things like that. So that's a big cost. So there has to be a balance in here, and there's only so much money you can spend on any more things to keep the animals out. It's, we've cost water, we've got high water costs, we've got high fuel costs. So I hope that you're considerate when you're thinking about the animal costs too. There's a balance. We can live with the animals, but we don't want them taking 3 dozen chickens or whatever. And that's it. That's the end of farming. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Any final comments from members of the public before we move on? Okay, thank you all for your comments today and for being with us this evening. We're going to move on into our agenda, into the consent agenda. There's that item 9.1 on the agenda be adopted by consent. That's basically the correspondence package. So moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Thank you. All those in favor, please. Or sorry, did you want to pull something? Okay.
I want to pull item 23H
Okay, item 23H
for consideration next time.
to go to the next meeting. Okay, thank you. 23H noted. Thank you. Everything else will be received and filed. Okay, all those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So next up is item 10.1, the Wanda Fuca Corridor Community First Regenerative Tourism Plan.
No, this is going to be for Louise. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and public. I'm just going to do a little bit of coordination right here. Louise, could you please take the seat up there? Okay. Louise, I'm just going to speak for a couple of minutes, then I'll turn it all over to you. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present the staff report tonight on the Wanda Fuca Corridor Community First Regenerative Tourism Plan. It is quite a lengthy report that was attached with your package. I hope everybody had an opportunity to read through it. I won't read through the entire staff report, just with respect for time. But the report is being provided so that council can receive the final draft of the Wanda Fuca Corridor report for information, and that council direct staff to engage with 4VI, which was formerly Tourism Vancouver Island, on the municipal regional district tax which is also known as the hotel tax, and make application to the province based on the provision of this report to the province. I'm just going to take one moment here to tell you that this project was supported by Destination BC and many other South Vancouver Island tourism organizations, economic development partners, and tourism-related businesses. It has established a new and vibrant path forward that will provide the way for continuous responsible tourism management through relationship building with neighboring communities between Beecher Bay and Port Renfrew, through reconciliation with our First Nations communities along their traditional territories within this corridor on which we respectfully live, work, and play, through regenerative tourism planning for our ever-growing visitor economy, through resiliency practices for tourism emergency and crisis management, and through recognition that change happens, which requires imminent and thoughtful adaptation with respect to climate action. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Louise Brown, which is our consultant from Destination BC. I'm very happy to have worked with her for the past year. She has a short presentation that kind of summarizes the extensive plan. And at the end of that, I'll just speak to you on a couple of next steps. Thank you. Louise, you're on.
Thank you very much, and appreciate the opportunity to share with you some highlights from the plan. You have a copy of the full report, so I'll be as quick as I can. just want to acknowledge that our work took place in the area and within the territories of the Shiano, Sooke and Pashidat, and we were grateful to have the participation of some of those nations within our work. And also to let you know that the piece of work was funded by Destination British Columbia, but also Pacific Can. And the emphasis was on community planning, community tourism planning. So it was very much a participative process, asking the views of the different communities across the region to share with us their aspirations and ambition for tourism and indeed for the visitor economy. Our steering group, you could see, comprised these different partners. And we were also grateful, not just in relation to District of Sooke for Gail's participation in that steering group, but also her colleagues across the organisation who helped enormously with providing research, with mapping, and with various other aspects of the plan. And our contributors, of course, it was a participative process, and these are just a few of the over 70 contributors that we had. They're all listed and named within the plan, but just to let you see the range of participants from government through the various ministries who attended our workshops, all the way through to the tourism providers, the operators locally, and not forgetting the arts community and culture. And you'll just see some of them indicated here. Activity providers, very important also. And here is our study area, the corridor area running from Chosen all the way to Port Renfrew, either side of Highway 14, but also taking in the maritime area. The water's edge is a critically important component of the visitor economy and the attraction for visitors. And we took a little bit of a license to roam on the interior aspect of the area, given the wonderful network of paths and trails that are available there. Some of the key considerations which came to us through the conversations that we had, we have gathered all those thoughts together, and they're detailed, those key considerations in the plan. But land, waters and Indigenous people, that was our starting point, because it is important that we think of the Indigenous nations within that context of land and water and their stewardship role relative to those elements. We also looked at blue and green spaces, so we moved from that into the more formal public spaces, not just, the wonderful plan that was produced by ourselves in relation to parks and trails, but also looking at CRD's regional plans and indeed Parks Canada in relation to what they have responsibility for in terms of the West Coast Trail and indeed the Pacific Rim. So a whole suite of different levels of management in relation to the blue and green spaces. Distinctive communities, this was one that came up time and time again. We need to protect and conserve the distinctive nature of the different communities. But Chosen is different to Sooke, is different to Port Renfrew, and we need to acknowledge that and take it forward in our plans. Our visitors, we have some information there about the profile of our different visitors to the area. It is something that needs to be worked on in terms of the metrics and understanding how visitors actually experience the area, how many, when do they come, and those sorts of matters. And then indeed our partners, some of whom are or have already been indicated here in our presentation, but very importantly, Destination BC, 4VI, Destination Greater Victoria, as well as those other ministries and agencies that actually hold the keys to the resource for tourism and how we can develop partnerships with all of them, including the First Nations. And I wished I was able to do the animated version of this one. It is a fantastic graphic which shows the different aspects of just the importance of climate change, looking after the environment. And the heading here is alignment. So we will have taken into account not only the work that you have done, but what CRD has done, what Port Renfrew has done, Parks and Trails master plan that you have, your transportation master plan, the cultural study, yourselves, all of the importance of all of those different pieces of work. And what we endeavored to do in relation to this study of ours was to put a tourism lens on all of that, because tourism is a very close cousin to recreation. And if we can work out accessibility, access for all, for people who live here, it will be appealing then for visitors. But we need to make it more visible for them, to bring it to their attention through wayfinding and signage. A regenerative approach, you'll have heard of that term, and resilience. So our goal was really about making sure that the future visitor economy is both resilient and regenerative. And we have to look at a number of well-beings: the environmental well-being, the community well-being, social well-being, and indeed, looking at the future of the visitor economy. We have to take all of those things into account. And very quickly, our actions, you can see there in relation to the different action areas that were identified: connecting the corridor, enhancing the hubs, enriching, the experience that visitors have. I'll not go into detail around the different actions, but these were the ones that emerged from our second workshop, where people were asked to actually be much more specific about the sorts of things that they wanted to see included. And then we have a section as well about gearing up, probably one of the more important components of the plan, but it looks at the importance of collaborating, to align the different agendas. So we arrive at a shared agenda for tourism, to manage the destination, responsible management, looking at the stewardship and learning from others, reaching out to CRD, regional parks, reaching out to your own parks department to see where are the pressure points. What can we do in relation to managing the impact of visitors? And then investment. There will be an appendix associated with the plan, which will detail all of the different sources of funding available. And indeed, some of the next steps are also identified. And I just want to leave you with this thought: considering what the world is facing with the climate crisis and biodiversity loss, regenerative tourism is the only solution moving forward. Once you see through that lens, there can't be any other way. So not sure if I've gone over my time, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your time with us tonight. So I'll ask members of council. We're receiving today's report for information, which is wonderful, because it's just great to see this plan here in front of us. It's this item has been something that we've talked a lot about and gotten to a certain point, but haven't been able to action yet. So it's wonderful to see it here. So thank you for persevering and for getting us to this point. The ask then would be to receive this and then to direct staff to do the next piece of the work, and that's engaging 4BI, Vancouver Island Tourism Association, to go ahead on the next steps. So questions on the interim. Councillor St. Pierre?
I was hoping through your worship to ask Ms. Scott about an opportunity that I heard of just today, actually. I think it was for funding for perhaps a larger study. We're looking here at connecting the Juan de Fuca Trail with the Pacific, the Marine Trail. This is a huge project, and interestingly enough, last Friday we were at the CRD Transportation Governance Workshop, and there's a bit of a regional lens happening at this point in terms of what it might be like to connect all these things. I think it's a good time to see about really what it would look like to connect those trails, but it's a very large project. It's going to require a fair amount of money, but I believe there's money on the table at other levels of government, and I was hoping Ms. Scott might be able to answer some questions about what we might be able to pursue and when we might want to pursue it to be most effective.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor St. Pierre. I have to apologize. The hearing equipment is not working, so I'm struggling a bit here. I will reply to what you've asked. It is my firm belief that this report
can provide us an opportunity to reconfirm and restart the process of applying for the MRDT hotel tax, using this as a base. And this will be done with a pre-agreement that we set up in 2023 with 4VI. But more importantly, this report has already been received by members of Destination Canada through Destination BC. Destination Canada has indicated to us that it would be really worthwhile for us to consider putting this report forward along with other collaborative partners in the South Island region that are involved in tourism to go after a brand new program that Destination Canada has offered up. And it's Tourism Corridor Program that mostly focuses on cross-border and cross-international border development of tourism experiences, products, opportunities for spin-offs from new business for various tourism products and experiences. The funding is available to five submissions only. It's $250,000 per each five that are selected over a 2-year period. And the deadline is for June 19th. Currently, we've already had a number of conversations with Langford, with Port Renfrew, with various representatives in and around the area. And it's agreed that we should collaborate and put forward a submission for this continued funding. That funding will allow us to develop a more, I guess, I'm going to have to say a more comprehensive tourism business plan that identifies opportunities and things that we could do to create more of a destination for our area. It could be expansion of trails. It could be partnership agreements with Washington State. This is all something that we have to talk about, decide what we want to put into that submission and go forward. But without question, we could not have moved forward and on anything if we didn't have an updated tourism plan. Our last one was dated 2008 and it really was not relevant to where we're going with regenerative tourism these days. And the fact that tourism today has to have climate adaptation strategies built into it for climate action. Thank you.
Other comments from members of council or questions? Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I saw a headline just last week, actually, that indicated, I didn't have time to read the article, but it said that other parts of the country are considering shifting their tourist season away from the summer months because of the smoke that we've been experiencing the last few years. And I think that represents a real opportunity for us to take advantage of that fact, because as we all know, people like to do their touring in the summertime. And so just, do you have any thoughts on that?
Were you asking for someone to, are you commenting or you're, okay.
And yes, I think there are many opportunities like that for this area to take advantage of. It's largely unexplored in terms of the appeal of the place. Yes, there are some hotspots, but when you look at the region in totality, I think there is that opportunity. There's also a move on the part of Destination BC to try and make tourism much more a year-round offering as well, so that we're looking at seasonal spread and indeed regional spread as well in terms of the benefits. So I think there are a number of opportunities that this area could sort of put itself forward to endeavour to exploit in the best way in terms of that opportunity. But yes, it is a challenge in relation to what is happening in relation to climate and forest fires and all of those sorts of things. But tourism has to be developed hand in hand with all of the other procedures and policies that are being put in place relative to dealing with those sorts of eventualities, the sort of crisis management and to actually gear up, for example, visitor centres to be able to advise visitors in an area in relation to where they can go, and also then to be a sort of a hub locally in times of difficulty, if whether it's floods, whether it's fire, whatever it might be, that they play that role within a community, albeit their primary reason for being is to provide information. So I think there are a number of opportunities in relation to that. I didn't see that article, but I think it's an interesting consideration.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McMath.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. So I just have a couple of questions. The report looks really great, and there's a couple connector pieces I'm missing. So in terms of the climate lens, Sooke's #1 contribution to it is essentially our traffic and our congestion. So Sooke's lens will be different in comparison with other municipalities. So I would like to see more direction in terms of how you're approaching that. We have a lot of natural resources here that we can complement and expand on, but particularly sort of that connection piece is the piece that's missing. And the other question I had was, we had discussed previously, there is some resistance to bringing in the MRDT. So I can appreciate that there is a large push from a lot of groups that are supporting that, and I see them reflected in this group. And in the report, I should say. But I would love to hear more about how you are approaching the education piece on people who do not want the MRDT and who are going to push very hard against that, and how you're going to get all that information out prior, because once that application process starts and it goes to a vote, how are you getting ahead of that?
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes. If I may, I'll maybe take the first question and I'll ask my colleague Gail to take the second one. Just in relation to the first one, there is, I identified an aspect, a key consideration, and indeed an action area around connecting the corridor. And here we drew very, very heavily on the transportation plan, active travel, looking at accessibility and access for all, looking at, the inverted pyramid, whereby you have pedestrians given first priority, then the cyclists, then the public transit, people who are traveling, in that form or that mode of travel, and then we've got the private car. So really, what we're talking about is, if we put a sort of a tourism lens on that, we're wanting to encourage visitors to explore, under their own steam, the area, whether it's on walking trails, whether it's cycling. And so there are very many actions identified within that particular imperative there around connecting the corridor. And it actually comes back, Councillor, if I may, to the point you made about connecting, the two long distance routes. It's identified within our connecting the corridor piece as well. And it's the timing of that. When can that be done? But I think it needs to remain an ambition, because the best way is for visitors to get around safely is off-road, because of just the nature of the route and the challenges that it poses. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but I'll maybe...
Not quite, but perhaps it's the way that I framed it as well. I know the sections you're discussing more sort of like a targeted approach on increasing that and pairing that economic development and tourism, so that we have less people, because we're going, I know what we're aiming for, but the reality is people are going to drive to and through Sooke. That is how that will be the primary mode of travel. That's the reality. So how are we generating more local businesses or supporting them to expand with the capacity and through that attraction, I'm assuming, which will come through the MRDT, but just sort of that piece was missing for me.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Baggett, some of the things that we're looking at, because we know transportation's a huge issue on our Route 14, not just for residents, but visitors alike. Having a plan as extensive as this allows us to look at opportunities for possibility of sea ferries, such as like the sea bus between Vancouver and North Vancouver, looking at possibly a helijet terminal in which people can fly in. I know that, and I hope I'm not speaking out of order, but the Prestige Inn is looking at expanding or identifying, putting in a float plane terminal. So we're looking at various other modes of transportation that will move people back and forth. We're looking at the Galloping Goose Trail as being a biking corridor. Maybe there's opportunities to expand or increase another, or maybe implement another laneway on that goose in certain areas. But we are restricted to one road in. So we have to get creative, and we need a plan. And we need a plan that will allow us to open the doors with, I'm going to say local, regional, provincial, and federal government to discuss how can we move people back and forth and still try and reach our targets of reducing GHG to 2030. That's all I can say on the transportation mode. On the MRDT question, the reason we contracted with Tourism Vancouver Island or VI is because they are experienced in conducting the whole process.
Sorry, I don't have a question about that. My question is, what is the education program to get ahead of the naysayers of the MRDT?
Well, right now, there is an extensive website that I think is quite incredible. It has everything you could possibly want to know and ask about the MRDT. It provides very, very clear answers to questions and tough questions. What I've been experiencing from people calling me that are saying they're not in support of Sooke going after the MRDT is that they don't agree with an additional tax. They don't feel like they should add another 3% or 2% onto the bill that a customer or a visitor is already paying for the night. And that said, they can feel that way. But the truth is, if we do not go after this tax, which 98% of the province of BC goes after and provides them a steady, dedicated revenue stream to improve and grow tourism the way it needs to be managed, we are going to be left behind. And I don't think it's going to turn out that there's going to be enough naysayers. I think there's going to be more pros for the collection of tax. The reason I say that is because the short-term policy that's also being implemented is requiring a lot of those roofed accommodators to now register. And once they get used to registering and being known as being an accommodator, I think they will probably follow suit and understanding visitors don't really care if they pay another 2% on the $250 a night room. That's not going to upset them that much. That money is used to manage responsible tourism in the way we want it done in accordance to our strategic plans.
I appreciate everything that you're saying. And it is very simple when someone like you or myself who is integrating it and who understands that. But you can see how easy it is to sway people to be against it when you're like, they're asking for a 3% tax, period, right? People will have, it'll, you know, it's like a paper's headline. It's going to be emotionally negatively triggering. And so so what I would love to see is us, rather than just having sort of sitting back with the website available, is sort of getting ahead of that with that positive messaging and all the explanations you just gave on the benefits of the MRDT, because you and I know both of those, but getting ahead of it for people who have no idea what the MRDT is and who could very quickly be confused and don't have more time. Like Councillor Lajeunesse read a headline earlier today and didn't have time to read the article. Like that is a very common thing for people. So I just would love to see us get ahead of that and be proactive with that messaging and a simplified explanation for people so there isn't a negative knee-jerk reaction.
I'll just reply quickly to that, Councillor Megan. 4VI has said very clearly that they will make that part and parcel of the work they're going to do on our behalf, is educating, meeting up with all accommodators, explaining the process, answering their questions, providing detailed information, pamphlets, whatever it requires. I can talk to 4VI to ensure that that would be part and parcel of the agreement that we sign with them to go forward on the process of trying to collect. In the end, it will all come down to numbers. If we have enough numbers, we'll be able to submit to the province. If the province chooses to approve, then we'll go forward, and it will be a continuous education process for all accommodators to understand what the value of MRDT is. There will be always a few that we will never be able to convince, like my neighbor. My neighbor has B&Bs, and she called me in and said, I just will never support this because I don't agree that we should charge people another tax.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I appreciate the conversation for sure. I just think to Councillor McMath's point, it's just getting the information out there. I would recommend, it's just an idea that should this motion pass, maybe we do a media release that we launch this and have the plan available to find, because even right now, when I did a quick search, layperson looking for it, it brings me to the old plan from 2008. This one doesn't pop up yet. So it needs, and I cannot find, when you reference a website, it's not easily found, but that could be me, right? So there's going to be others who would have that same concern, because I'm not, that are going to do what I do, and it's going to hit them to a road that they don't like. So this is the proactive piece of just getting that information out there. So here it is, and this is the fresh plan, because it puts me in the dead end with the old one. And that's no one's fault. It's just the way the settings in the system worked. And I get it, it's a draft, so we can't be out there until this is received and endorsed. There's a step that council needs to take, but this will just help alleviate that. And I hear what you're saying fully. I think we all do, which is why we're at this point where we are today. It's just, we want the successful outcome, and we know that there was hesitancy in the community in past years. It doesn't mean that'll be the future, but it just means that we don't want to go down that same road and do it differently.
No, points well taken, and I'll ensure that there is appropriate education materials.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with all of that conversation. You know, it's the simple matter is that if I travel anywhere else in BC practically, and I stay somewhere, I'm paying a 2 to 3% tax, unless I'm in Whistler when I'm paying a considerably larger tax. So thank you for this report, plan, I should say, which needs a comma, by the way, in the motion. It's community first, comma, which is rather critical. You don't often see a comma in a title. So it's a key point around building distinctive communities. So you have 10 action areas here, and you've given us a collection of recommendations. interesting to me, this plan is of course in a hierarchy of its own, right? With our OCP at the very top of it. What I'm missing in the plan here would be references to the OCP, both the 2010 version and our pending OCP, which does have some, not extensive, but some strong statements around tourism. And I was curious as to how in your document review, you looked at those documents and also the various other pieces that have led to this moment in time, the Wild by Nature report, Promote Sooke Task Force that the mayor led, the Royal Roads University Tourism Studies, that 2008 plan, those among other documents. How did you mold those into this current document?
Yes, well, I did a review of those documents because you were kind enough to share those links with me. I haven't referenced all of them within the document, but what we will do is put our appendix, which will be a bibliography of how, you know, the various sources. It's tricky just to get the balance right between all of the footnotes, you know, that currently appear and adding more. So it was really to try and highlight some of those key documents within the report that had implications for the different action areas. So, you know, the master plan, the transportation one, you know, the various community plans would all have been looked at for all of the different areas as well. So whether it be Port Renfrew, albeit it's woefully out of date, that particular one. So rather than reference them each time, it was just to read them, understand them, and then interpret in relation to the content. But I think, yes, what is missing is the bibliography where we can demonstrate to readers, you know, the extent of the research undertaken.
I'm still going strong here, Councillor St. Pierre. Yeah, get in the queue. Now, I did note, I like your item 1, hold space for First Nation engagement. So I do see a lot of references to the Patchadat in this report, but I don't see it from Sooke and Shianu.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah. Invitations would have been issued to all First Nations and indeed a whole range of prospective participants in the conversations. And Pashida took us up on the offer, and we actually had a site visit. Gail Scott and myself spent a weekend with them, and it was endeavoured to do justice to the insights we learned during that visit and the work they have underway. But this isn't the final word, this particular piece of work. It is about building relationships. It's about sharing sharing perspectives and actually, you know, having the conversation. So maybe it provides somewhat of a shared agenda to take forward, to have those conversations with Shianu First Nation and indeed with Sooke First Nation. We were advised on our steering group, we had Christina Clark, Centre for Indigenous Prosperity, and she would have been a great advisor in relation to keeping us you know, just informing us about the different stages of development of those First Nations. And obviously some of them have much more pressing priorities to attend to, you know, than others. Yes. And maybe it's just to do with their readiness to become involved. But that's not to say that they're not important, fundamentally important to all of this. But if, as long as the strategy provides almost the beginnings of a shared agenda to build those relationships into the future, because we're not going to do it overnight. It's going to be a long process.
So I'll use the last of my 5 minutes to just say, so this is a living document. It will keep evolving. I noticed the 2008 plan did get updates through 2013, and then all things stopped. So yes, a living document. And I do hope that there will be opportunities to look very closely at these actions, and we need to be prioritizing, because the few of them here don't align necessarily with how I think of what the OCP is directing us to do, but this is a corridor. So it's not just all about us, is it? No, exactly. Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something that Councillor Bateman was talking about, and actually it just occurred to me, and it shouldn't have taken so long, that because this is a document that had the input from a lot of different communities and a lot of different documents, this is actually not just a District of Sooke document. So I was curious, is this also going to be presented to Wanda Fuca? I mean, this stuff is going to be shared widely. Are you doing this presentation in many places? And it almost feels like you need to continue having some sort of representation from various groups to continue pushing this forward. How do you see that working?
Okay.
How do you see that sort of work moving forward?
I will answer, but then I will also ask Gail to chip in if that's okay. If we go back to the beginning, it was very much about a community tourism plan. So the process of engagement was critically important. To actually ask people what they value about the place, the residents, the businesses here, and the operators, that we saw listed on one of the slides. So it was really to be responsive to where they wanted tourism to go and the type of tourism they want to see. It was appropriate that we bring the report to yourselves, and it will go to District of Chosen and indeed Port Renfrew. They're the key partners in the work. But I would like it to go back to the joint authors, which are all of the contributors who would have provided their input, so that it remains draft until people see the outcome of their work, because it was very much co-created, the document itself. But there needs to be some prioritization, there needs to be some sort of substantive feedback in relation to the various priorities at this draft stage, in terms of, how it's taken forward. Does that answer your question?
Follow up. It sort of answers my question. Mostly it makes me honestly slightly concerned, because I think that, for example, in terms of following up with Destination Canada, it sounds like talks are happening with Langford and other local governments, and we can potentially move forward and secure funding to make things happen. When we're looking, for example, at the Galloping Goose connecting properly with Sooke and connecting properly throughout the rest, you're going to need, the CRD, Sooke, various other, the province probably into it as well. A lot of this just needs people to get together and make decisions.
Exactly.
And when you don't necessarily know who those decision makers are clearly, I'm not sure how that can move forward. So I see the co-creation of a document. I see a living document. I see a need to be respectful of all the people that have put forward. I would also love to see a lot of it actioned. And so I hope that in all this, we're also going to be seeing, I don't know, some sort of a task force, or who knows what it would take to actually pick the low-hanging fruit, make it
But
happen
that's,
right away.
if I may, that's part of the work, like we have to get on with it. So, and that's in the report here, it's talking about the scope of services and the next steps. And that's how we get on with those things. In terms of the CRD and the transportation service, we're a year out from that. But this work meanwhile can't wait for that. It needs to go. And then the other pieces will gradually come together.
I certainly.
So I'm just at a point here where we need to get on with this and we need to get on with our agenda. So I'm going to ask council to be succinct now in your questions, and then we can move to a decision, or if you want more time to discuss this plan and all the pieces, then we can bring it back to a future meeting. But we also just need to get on with this program. It's been over a decade in the making. Sorry if I sound impatient. Sorry, I had Councillor Beddoes first and Pearson.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thanks very much. I'm not going to be long-winded. Enough has been said tonight. I just wanted to follow up. Thank you for your report tonight, by the way. I just wanted to follow up and launch in Councillor Lawson-Esch's point and that article. We have a mild climate out here, and people are really turned off about traveling in the summer because of the heavy people. We have an advantage here, is that we have a mild fall and winter, and we could do so much better in advertising yourself through storm watching and all that sort of stuff, because we have more to offer than they would in Saskatchewan and Alberta, which are covered in snow in those times of year. The last thing, just very quickly, is Pachidat Band is very tourist oriented, and our other First Nations have a more diverse business plan, but Pachidat is very keen on promoting tourism and to make things. So that may be why you only got the reply from them. they're very progressive out there. So thank you for your report. Thank you.
I'll just share that my small town where I grew up with a 300 already have their plan in place and they market year-round activities in the foothills on the edge of Kananaskis, and they've been doing it very well for years. Councillor Pearson.
Yep. Yeah, okay, quick. Thank you for the plan and the next steps, because it feels like it's progressing. This is the first time I can, sort of feel that there's some shape to the clay. Long ways to go. My request is if you could circle back through the information, because we do have a new chief and new council in the Sooke Nation. And maybe there's a more reception there, or maybe it got lost in the transition in elections and things like that. I mean, they also have their local government, but it would feel good to me, because I think that the chief and his council are more apt to be really excited about more tourism in our area, because as we can see coming into town, they're doing some development with some services that will be beneficial to tourists being here. So that would be my ask. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for the great work that where we're at now, because it does feel like progress.
Yeah, and I'll just add, it demonstrates like, we reach out once, that we continually reach out again. This council has taken this step. Here we are now. We'd like to meet with you if possible and share where we're at. And I think that's important as it goes through the provincial decision makers to demonstrate that outreach. Okay, so moving to the recommendation here, and that is that council receive the final draft of the Juan de Fuca Corridor Community First Regenerative Tourism Plan for information, and that council directs staff to engage with 4VI on the MRDT application process. It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any further discussion on the motion as it's proposed? Seeing none. All those in favor, please. Any opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone, and thank you both for your time with us tonight. I am going to ask council that we just pause briefly for a health break. It's currently 9:11 according to my clock, so I'll see you back here at 9:20. So just shy of 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're at 9:20, so back into our agenda for this evening, and we're at 10.2, which is next steps for the Sooke Community Garden Project.
Thank you. So to begin, see if this is, there we go. So to begin the presentation, why are we here? I think we heard the story of Joe, and that probably says anything better than Emma and I'll say tonight. No disrespect to Emma, but that kind of sets the stage a little bit. So Sooke Transition Town Society provided an update to council at the April 22nd, 2024 meeting. At that meeting, council directed staff to report back on the delegation report and further describe what steps might be taken in the short, medium, and long term. In addition to council's April 22nd motion, community gardens are identified as a priority in the strategic plan, the official community plan, and the Parks and Trails master plan. From that April 22nd meeting, council had some specific questions, and we'll look to address those in this presentation. To provide additional background, Sooke Transition Town Society, partnering with Sooke Food Chi Society, received $7,000 in climate action seed funding in 2023 to support the development of a new community garden near the town center. Initially, the group undertook an assessment of suitable land for establishing, 50 allotment garden plots and 50 square meters of common gardens for food bank production. Their ultimate goal is to find a permanent location for 100 allotment gardens plus 50 square meters of common garden space for food production and education.
So one of the questions raised by council at a previous meeting was whether community gardens are permitted in parks. And we did a deeper dive into the zoning bylaw, and parks are permitted use in all zones. The definition of parks is public land for public recreation and conservation purposes. This includes a historical or natural site and may include buildings, structures, and infrastructure dedicated to support recreation, including horticulture. Further diving into horticulture is the practice of growing fruits, vegetables, and flowers, but this does not include the raising of livestock, so just note that. So community gardens are permitted use in District of Sooke parks. So in addition to looking at land use compliance, there's also some policy considerations. The Parks and Trails Master Plan outlines different park classifications that guide the intended use of our parkland. So the lands requested by Transition Sooke for the development of a new community allotment garden are the Ponds Park corridor site, which is classified as a linear park supporting an urban trail network and adjacent to the Carter Navarrete Dog Park. Woodland Creek Park is designated as a neighborhood park in the PTMP and includes a trail network, playground equipment, and a natural pond feature there with some natural open space as well. The third site identified by the group was John Phillips Memorial Park. This is designated as a community park, approximately 7 hectares in size, so larger than the other sites, with established parking, washroom facility, trail network, and natural areas. Master planning process was initiated back in 2006, I understand, and kind of re-looked at in 2015. And completion of this planning process is identified as an action in our current PTMP. Transition Sooke also requested consideration of the district's Lot A property on Wadham's Way. So we looked into the public engagement has occurred on the conceptual plans for this property for the development of a public plaza and identified the space as a priority for hosting the community market. So due to all that work that's happened and identifying the community market as a priority, staff did not look at further consideration of Lot A for an allotment garden.
So specific to council's questions on timelines and the short term, if directed by council, staff are prepared to support the neighborhood consultation on a prospective semi-permanent 3-year pilot project for a community garden. This engagement would be a collaboration led by Sooke Transition Town Society and Sooke Food Tree. Staff have discussed this approach with the parties and they are supportive. More specifically, the district would host content and amplify engagement, including a survey. Park pop-ups would be hosted in each location. One staff would attend alongside the organizations at one of the park pop-ups occurring in each location. Additionally, the volunteer groups have indicated door knocking would be another tactic used to support engagement. Staff would coordinate a report on the findings of this engagement to be presented to council, likely in the fall of 2024. While there is a possibility this may be available for the July 22nd regular council meeting, the volume of input received may impact the time required to appropriately review the feedback. Based on the findings from the neighborhood consultation, staff see two potential paths, again, during this short-term phase of the project. One, facilitating a 3-year small-scale semi-permanent garden if supported by the community and council. Or two, if a community garden is not supported by the neighborhood or council, staff do not have the capacity to manage additional consultation at this time. As such, staff see this project folding into the existing work planning, such as the John Phillips Memorial Park Master Plan, should this work be supported through 2025 budget deliberations or integration through development applications as appropriate.
So to respond to council's ask about timelines looking into the short, medium, and long-term, related actions are summarized on this slide. As you can see, and as Christina just referred to, neighborhood-specific consultation is the immediate short-term action. Based on the findings from engagement and subsequent consideration by council, if support was received, a 3-year pilot project may emerge as a medium-term item. The John Phillips Park Master Planning, pending support from council through 2025 budget deliberations, is another medium-term action. While not specific to community gardens, this would be a scope consideration within that master planning engagement. Long-term may include a license of occupation agreement with Fuji and Transition Sooke, and be dependent on the success of their pilot project. Just a final slide about resource implications. So if supported by the neighborhood and council, new water connection and metering for a community garden would be required. This and related infrastructure could be in the magnitude of $5,000 to $10,000. This investment could be accommodated in the 2025 budget, either as a supplemental request to be considered amongst other priorities, or possibly as a priority through the Local Government Climate Action Program Fund. Staff proposed that other assets such as a storage unit, fencing, surfacing, garden boxes, and the actual water use itself be an expense borne by Transition Sooke and Fuji. This has been discussed with the representatives and accounted for in their budgeting. So in short, staff do not foresee the financial resources as a barrier to proceeding with the project. Something that council may also wish to consider is the staff-related human resource implications anticipated from the request. So in the short term, staff anticipate approximately 20 to 30 hours of staff time to participate in the engagement. And should the project receive public and council support, the development of a license of occupation agreement and that oversight could require approximately ballpark figure of 50 hours of additional work through this year end to develop that. And going forward, during operation of a pilot garden project, approximately 40 hours a year to have staff involved in operational oversight, things like overseeing cultural heritage, environmental considerations, maintenance needs, responding to calls for service for the site, that type of thing.
So with that additional context, we'll leave council with the recommendations on the screen, and we're happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions to staff from the report tonight. Councillor Bateman?
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Very exciting to see this process unfold with staff and community advocates working together. It's great to see. I had one question regarding who would get these plots. Would they be reserved first option going to those living in the neighborhood, or would it be individuals from throughout Sooke?
I think that question might be better for answered by the agency, but I think that might be a little too premature through this stage because we're still looking at the site, and the next milestone is to see what neighborhood support to go if there actually is one. I know that they've already started an interest list that I believe is about 35. I'm looking at Levi here, about 35 deep that are Sooke residents that have expressed a need of some form or another. Because we don't have a site, I wouldn't know if they're what proximity they are, if they're neighboring properties or in a condominium or apartment building, et cetera.
Well, I would think that would be a primary question you'll be hearing as you do your neighborhood consultation. So it'd be a good idea to have an answer to that. I think that also with neighborhood engagement and involvement in the community garden, it would answer some of the parking issues that I think are kind of central to these two locations. That's a comment, not a question. Third point, Ann Boquist from the Sooke Children's Garden Club was in chambers back at that initial presentation. And I know she's got space issues at Sun River. So I was wondering, are there possibilities to have that Children's Garden Club involved with these gardens?
I think those are sort of takeaways that can be done, not necessarily answered tonight because part of it is on the site, but these are good things that provided this passes and the groups go out, then those are answers to the questions we ask tend to be what you'll also be asked in the community. Yeah. So thanks for putting them forward. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I think it's good work. And can through you to stuff, how did we land on only 3? I thought we talked about some other additional sites.
Those were the ones that emerged from the methodology that they used as the top priority from the organization. So the top 4 sites were the ones that we took a look at predominantly. There is a longer list certainly, but this was the top 4 sites based on logistics that the group is best able to support on their end. So other sites have additional sort of logistical challenges or for other reasons emerged lower through their methodology that they used. So
I thought we talked specifically a little bit about and I don't even know what the name of the park is, where the horseshoe pitch is. We've got a significant amount of land there, and I know parking is a bit of an issue on River Road, but significant amount of land that's currently not even being used for anything.
It may be its proximity to the river and the wildlife.
Yeah,
might enjoy the produce.
No, it's just, no, I'm thinking about growing stuff, but yeah, okay. I don't know. I was just kind of, so if this is our best 3 going forward as input.
So through the chair, just to clarify, the group looked at sites within proximity to the town center. So I don't believe that encompassed across Sooke River to the park that you're
pretty nice, significant piece of land.
I think that particular parcel needs an actual, similar to this motion, and it's something we can discuss later, is it actually does need a type of a plan on what to do with the land, and that may emerge at a later time. Just saying. Yeah, exactly. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I'm sort of in favor of moving on and, getting some consultation with the public and finding out some cost. I think your $12,000 estimate for the fencing and everything is way low, but that will come out in the wash. My biggest concern is the parking and access to these. I think of those 3 sites you mentioned, like the Ponds Corridor, we're already running into all sorts of people complaining about any parking around there for the dog park. And I can't remember the name of the street. But anyways, yeah, so I'm sure you're going to look at all those details, but that would be a very serious one to me, because if you're going to go work a garden, you're going to have a vehicle close by, unless you're just over the fence for your wheelbarrows, your shovels, and I don't know. Anyways, I have some concerns about that, but that'll come out in the report. So thank you.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I think the sites that have been identified are great, but I think moving forward as higher density development occurs, we always have these amenity areas as part of these higher density developments. And if those could be identified as community gardens for the specific developments, I know, like, as I mentioned before, in Seattle, they have just residential lots kind of scattered throughout West Seattle that are, they call it pea patches, and anyone can go in there and grow food and put artwork and all kinds of things in there. And it's really, it's kind of just the social aspect of it is as important as the kind of food production thing. And so I think it's a nice addition to any neighborhood.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I was thinking to read out the resolution and move it if.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So that council directs staff to work with Sooke Transition Town Society and Sooke Region Food Chi Society to conduct public engagement on the feasibility of establishing a pilot community allotment garden project at Woodland Creek Park and Ponds Park corridor, and report back to council on the findings, and that council consider dedicating funds to advance the John Phillips Memorial Park Master Plan and conduct related public engagement in the 2025 budget.
Okay, that's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just turn it off. I think that great work done by staff and Sooke Transition Town and Sooke Food Chi on this. There's already been good public engagement to support all this. We know that there's a demand. We know that there's lots of benefits in terms of doing this. It's part of most of our plans. I don't know what more needs to be said. It's a small investment to actually move forward in a lot of things.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
Ditto.
Any comments from anyone else? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'm absolutely in favor of this. I think the second part gives me pause, only in that we also have a town center plan that is prioritized in the draft OCP, as are the neighborhood area plans. So I guess it's a question of funding. So it says consider. So I take it we'll consider this during our strategic planning next month. So we're not locking in a commitment to do this in 2025.
No, it's just to advance it. I'll speak next on this, on the point that you raised is the old plan that was for John Phillips identified a number of uses. And anytime there was an intent to action an item, whether it was bike skills, horseshoes, amenity building, there's resistance. So before we can go ahead with anything, let's look at this plan. We've done some changes now with the parking lot, egress, where development, the future realignment of Otter Point Road and the like. And also, thanks to the Sooke Community Association, a lot of bigger events are now going to be hosted over across the river at Fred Mill Park, like the music festival, which is a great venue. So let's relook at this park here and what is it going to look like for the future. So it's timely, but it's the same to, you know, there's sort of some collisions down at Sooke River Road, and that needs to be ironed out as well. Sort of the vision of that land, of where I was on council when we acquired it and where it is at today was not the vision of why we acquired that land. So it's potentially another one that needs to have another look, as well as everything else. But there is a demand for folks to access parks to do things, and we're unable to do anything with John Phillips. So that's kind of why this is here. Whiff and Spit is another one that we talk about. So there is a lot of work and only so much time and capacity to do them all. In terms of the first motion, or the first part of that, I am in support of this, particularly what you'll hear from the neighbors. You know, it may be similar or not, but it is, you know, high density area. Residents may not have a sunny plot in their backyard right now to grow anything out of, or it may be a place where they have their dog doing dog business or kids kicking a ball around. So the ability to grow anything in that space is challenging, whereas having a over the fence place to actually grow something you know, may resonate with the neighborhood. But let's hear what that looks like and what transpires over the next while, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I will call the question on this. All those in favor, please. Any opposed? That is carried unanimously. We've dealt with 10.3 already, so this brings us to item 11. 11.1, the council procedure amendment bylaw. Over to staff.
Thank you. Tonight, we are looking for council to consider giving 3 readings to the presented council procedure amendment bylaw 905, 728-05, 2024, and that council directs staff to provide notice in accordance with section 94 of the community charter. Over the past few months, various staff reports have gone to council discussing different aspects of this proposed bylaw, including public question and comment period being extended, housekeeping updates, as well as changing the committee of the whole adjourn time, as well as amending the start time to the open council meetings and the following in-camera council meetings. So this proposed bylaw incorporates all of those changes as directed by council, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, no, it streams straightforward to me. It's it'll be interesting to see how this goes. And I just say that in my 16 years of sitting in these chambers and various seats, I've seen it all occur. And a lot of the intention is about, you know, utilizing everyone's best energy, best presence, and so forth. So, you know, I'm open to seeing how this goes, but I also am concerned that we start at 6. We got lots of time. It's only 9, 9:30, 10, and then everything drags on. So part of it is about not staying up into the night, but being present and fresh for the deliberations that we have. So we all have an obligation to share the air there. So it's one of those things on council. Yes, you have up to 5 minutes and can speak twice on things or to ask questions, and these are all good things. But how late do you really want to sit here? Because if we all did that, maybe here late all the time. And is that the most effective use of everyone's time? So just because we're starting at 6 an hour earlier, I'm not that keen on that. I just say I'm willing to give it a go and can make arrangements for that. Just see it dragging, potentially see it dragging on later. Are we going to get out of here at 8:30 or is it going to go late because we have time to spare because we're used to sitting late? I don't know. We'll see. I just say that, I don't see my child at all because of this. So by the time I get home now, he's in bed. At least if we don't have it in camera and it starts at 7, I get to spend time with him. So, you know, but that's fine. We'll figure it out. But for those with families, you are eliminating that time with their children. But if we actually get through agendas, maybe I can see them for half an hour if we finish at 8:30. If we drag on till 10:30 or 11, then it's not going to happen. So it's just something to think about. So I wasn't here, but life changes and that's how it goes. So give it a go. Councillor Bateman.
Quick question, when does this begin? 2 weeks from now? No.
Through the chair to council. So to meet the legislative requirements, we're required to provide public notice of the adoption of this bylaw for 2 weeks. And so by my calculations, it would be the 2nd June meeting is our next regular meeting. So we do have 2 weeks notice we can give in between that. As well, we are required to update there's a requirement for annual advertising of all of our start times for our meetings. And I think to give the public adequate notice, we would also want to reissue that for this year as well. So what I might propose to council at the 2nd June meeting, if we're chomping at the bit for 6 p.m. start time, to also get a resolution to change the next meeting start date, or alongside a public notice or statutory notice for the meeting start time advertisement. Otherwise, it would be the 2nd meeting in July would be the official first date, unless council wanted to resolve to change the first meeting in July start date to 6 o'clock.
I think just to keep it simple, let's just go with what is going through the hopper, because otherwise some will show up at 6, some will show up at 7, and like just keep it simple and then just change the meeting, the Outlook dates that are held in our calendars, because
That's right.
that'll be very important.
Certainly.
Thank you. I saw another hand, Counselor St. Pierre.
Move the resolution?
Yep, that's first, second, and third reading to the council procedure bylaw number 905-72805-2024, and that council directs staff to provide public notice in accordance with section 94 of the community charter. So that's moved by Counselor St. Pierre, seconded by Counselor Pearson. Anything further on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay. I'm seeing no new business. So item 13 is a correspondence requiring action. This was pulled by Counselor Bateman from a previous meeting, response to minor DCC updates, Sooke Builders Association. Counselor Bateman?
Yeah, I just wanted to pull that bit of correspondence because it was substantial and it speaks to our evolving relationship with the Sooke Builders Association, that council is paying attention. I understand staff are responding to the questions raised in this document.
Sure, I can speak to that briefly. So yes, I didn't get a chance to today, but I will be sending an email update response to their letter. And then June 4th at the council meeting will be the minor DCC variance report, or DCC variance. The minor DCC update report will be presented to council for consideration, and Sooke Builders Association will be made aware of that meeting, and they would be more than welcome to come and provide their commentary at that time. Just want to remind, I guess, but part of the messaging to them will be that it was draft. Everything is draft until we present a bylaw for 3 readings to council. So numbers are always subject to change on drafts, and human error is a thing. So yes, there will be a response, and then June 4th will be when it will be presented back to council for further consideration.
Okay, so that'll be then a motion to receive and file, please. Moved by Counselor Bateman, seconded by Pearson. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. No items removed. The correspondence will fall to the next one. So item 15, council verbal reports, please. Who would like to go first? Counselor, I'll pick on someone. Fine, St. Pierre.
So as previously mentioned, myself, Councillor Bateman, and Mayor Tate attended the CRD Transportation Governance Workshop. It was extremely well facilitated and well attended by a lot of people from all the 13 different local governments. Very interesting in terms of what their focus is. They're really looking at trying to fill in some of the gaps in terms of the regional transportation systems at all levels, highways, internal road networks, sidewalks, trails, so on and so forth, and also potentially major infrastructure projects that would include transportation corridors, such as the ones that are mentioned in Bill 44, but which of course Sooke doesn't have any of. And most of us smaller areas don't have any of, but who knows? So quite good. Of course, nothing actually written in stone at this point in time. It's all very, very preliminary. And quite frankly, I have no idea how they're going to pay for it all, but good work was done on that day.
Thank you, Counselor St. Pierre. Counselor Beddoes.
Well, it's just interesting. I've been trying to make this report for 3 meetings now. And every time it's saying, oh no, it's gone too long, we're not having verbal report, so I almost forgot. Just at Sea Park, we had the workshop on the bike park. We had 40 participants drawing up what they'd like to see on the new skate park, progressing very well. I attended that, and some of the Sea Park commissioners attended as well, and even the mayor popped in for a moment, but she had a son down there. But it's a lot of interest, and it's good to be a nice addition to Sooke for the youth to use, and not just kids. A lot of adults were there, and very, very much interested. So yeah, it was a good time. That's it.
Thank you. Counselor Pearson.
Of the Atlantic at the Legion, we attended. Several councillors, I think Councillor Beddoes, Councillor Lajeunesse, the mayor, myself, and no. Okay, that was a good event. I also attended the Friends of Sooke Park. They had a up-to-date movie in the park near me, and it was E.T. So, and it was, it was, I call it Maple Park, but the name escapes me. Centennial Park, I believe is what it's called. Millennial Park, not Centennial Park, Centennial Pool. I'm getting old. Yeah, and it was well attended, and it was a really good event, and it looked like families were out there. It was before our cold snap, so people enjoyed themselves. I also attended the Wantafuka Water Commission meeting on May the 7th. Good news is that we have lots of water in our reservoir, but it follows the same natural curve that it always follows. We were April 28th, we were at 98.7% full. There was some long-term, short-term, and medium-term projects that we may be interested in Sooke. And I have the report in front of me, and I don't have it to open to the right page. But there was a discussion that one of the things that happens across the region is that this time of year, automatic waterers turn on at 000 on whatever hour. 6 o'clock in the morning, and it creates a huge demand on water in early morning. So what they were asking is to mention it and program your water controllers, or if you're talking to irrigation people, get them to say for quarter after, 20 after, 25 after, things like that. So yeah, 13 after, and short watering time. So I was trying to find the actual projects that we may be interested in, but they're all in the report, and there's some big major projects that will require funding. Oh, here they are here. Sooke, long-term, medium-term and long-term Mountain Heights, new pipe, pump station upgrade, storage tank, and then short-term, short and medium-term, Sooke Town Center, approximate locations, Otter Point Road, Grant Road, Sooke Road, Throop Road. And that's distribution piping, about 4,800 linear meters. And yeah, long-term Hanlon, distribution main, long-term Spartree, which is in Aranan. And the definition of long-term, short-term, and medium-term are short-term is 2024 to 2029, medium is 2030 to 2035, and long-term 2036 to 2044. So lots of projects in the pipeline for the Wantafuka distribution system, and lots of money coming forward to be spent in Sooke. Some of that will be always obviously developer contributed as they want to advance developments in those areas, but some big projects coming. That's it. Thank you.
Counselor Bateman.
You know, that's some big news right there, because that is how the development timetable will have to be played out in Sooke, right? So I've got multiple pages here dating back to Earth Day. I participated in the community broom cleanup. There was the EMCS capstone projects that you and Councillor McMath and I were at, where grade 12 students presented their best feet forward. A pretty remarkable group of grads. Sookerama, I got to spend time with Gail Scott, who's departed the room, and all of us were there, I believe. Except you were in Vegas. That you were. Oh, and on it goes. CRD board, the wastewater treatment plant capacity expansion project was last week, and that was fascinating. Paul and his colleague there give fabulous descriptions of the science, and I think the school groups will really enjoy touring the wastewater plant. It's not too smelly there, at least, if not elsewhere in town. And finally, a couple more things. Sooke Homelessness Coalition attended, and our council appointees, St. Pierre and Beddoes were there. Tony led a brainstorming session. We determined we wanted to get something practical done short term, so we're going to push for the RV homeowner matchmaking project, which was addressed here in Sooke Council. We were told to take it forward to the province for their feedback, given that all sorts of issues related to building bylaw and other matters. And Ravi Parmar has it now, and we'll see if we can make any progress with it, because there are a lot of people suffering in the community. And as a short term, as Councillor Beddoes made very clear, this needs to be a short-term emergency measure pending the creation of attainable, affordable housing. And that's it.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, so attended the Fire and Life Safety Expo in Machosen last month, which is an excellent event where firefighters from around the region train kids about what do's and don'ts of what to do in the house. And they have, it's actually kind of fun. They have little things set up like a room, and then they'll have an outlet that has 15 things plugged into it, and they have all kinds of examples like that. And the kids have to point out all the issues that could be potential fire hazard. And they go through, like, I can't remember the number of kids that they go through, but it's all the schools in the region, and they cycle them through fairly quickly, but it was a really fun event, actually. What else? I don't have any notes with me, but I'm just looking through my calendar here. Sooke, which I didn't get to see a lot of it because I ended up stopping and talking to about half a dozen people for about 30 minutes each. So I didn't actually see much of the presentations, but what I did see was really good. What else? The last month also was the CRD Water Commission meeting. And so there's a major expansion being discussed at a cost of $2 billion. And they were looking at a 25% municipal assist factor. The DCCs are set to increase by about $10,000 a door for new construction. With the 25% assist value, it would have been somewhat less than that. But the board decided to go with a 1% assist factor. So it will be 100% on DCCs to cover the cost of that over the next several years. Let's see what else. Oh, the museum. We had a planning session for the Sooke Historical Society for the museum with the new director there. Went extremely well. It was very well organized. Let's see. Oh, the opening of the Macola housing facility on Drennan. Really nice facility. I'm not thrilled with the look from the street, but once you're on the property, it's really nicely done. It's an excellent facility. I would live there myself. And what did I do this month? I attended a Pacific Northwest Economic Development seminar, which I've attended these before, and they've been really good. This one didn't really apply much to the island. It was more about transportation, kind of to the east of us. I think that is about it. The Battle of the Atlantic ceremony, of course, which is always good. It's amazing that we lost over 100 ships in that confrontation. And when I tell my American in-laws about that, they're not aware that Canada was even involved in World War II. because we don't have Hollywood movies about Canadian contributions, but yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. Councillor McMath, anything to report out? Okay, maybe not. So just some, oh, go ahead, Councillor McMath.
There we go. Sorry, there's just like a little lag sometimes. Very quickly, yeah, I did 2 days with the MCS grad students, and I found it incredibly rejuvenating. Crest had their AGM, and I believe you should have received a copy of the annual report. And if you haven't, I can send you a copy. Quick overview. Just the financials, that the plans for the post-disaster public safety building have been finalized. Hopefully the build out will start shortly. It's going to be located in Langford. Just some finalizing pieces on the infrastructure build out to Renfrew. The cell phone reception is there now. We're just waiting for the radio connectivity. And within that package is also quite a fascinating map that it just covers the transmissions for the area. So if you ever wondered where all of the towers are located, you'll be able to see them within that package. And oh yeah, there is one other addition, a familiar name, and Sooke's previous staff sergeant, Brett Sinden, is now the latest representative as the RCMP board director for Crest.
Great.
And that's all for now.
Thank you very much, Councillor McMath. So I'll start my comments just with a thank you to everyone, deputy mayors for stepping in, Councillor Bateman and Councillor Lajeunesse. While I was away, yes, I was in Vegas, and also then I was in California. And then I had, yeah, I don't know, if you're over 50, consider getting the shingles vaccine, because I dealt with that. And then I've had extraordinary, interesting dental related matters that apparently only affect 1 in a million. And I was the lucky recipient of that, which is, so I'm learning a lot about the wide array of dental services, periodontists, orthodontics, endodontists, dentists, and another one to come of a different nature. So it's fascinating, but painful. So just appreciate everyone stepping in on all of these pieces. I do want to share this with you. Does that look familiar? So this is a piece of artwork that I received on behalf of council from a local artist named Jenny Adams. And she did have to move out of Sooke, so I was unable to be with us today. She called this the Highway of Spools. And the inspiration was that during the highway work that was happening, there was spools hanging through the work that was happening for the highway. And that's inspired the artwork that she provided and has gifted to us. And this art is dedicated to all of the workers who were involved in keeping us all safe throughout the construction, and those that keep us safe on the highway beyond. So we do have a policy where the SPA committee does need to vet these things, but I did sort of jump that and just accepted the artwork. So it's for here on display on Chambers, and I thought it would just add a touch of vibrancy to these to our area here. Also a thanks to staff, we managed to totally nail the whole local government school, or Sooke Council Club, as a young person has named it. This is where various age groups come and visit Municipal Hall. They tour, they learn about our operations, they tour the fire hall, and we do an activity, and we've been working on this for years and really nailed it this time. We talked a bit, this was a kindergarten class, so mindful of the age group. We handed out money versus 3 stickers, 7 priority areas, and where would they spend their money. And so there was areas around for them to look at, to talk about. I asked them how they felt. They all walked here. They all felt very safe. They all appreciate the crosswalks. So the work that we're doing is for this generation. And it worked out really well. They all then had to choose an item of swag. And everyone got the same one. So naturally, not everyone picked that, but that's democracy, right? In the end, decisions are made, the majority rules, and this is what you go home with. But I did share a secret that if they find us throughout the summer at various events, we do have the other swag available. So if any of you are there and you're asked for something, this is where this all comes from. I did also spend time at John Muir School in response to students that wrote to me. And I wrote back to them and they invited me to meet with the class and just talking about how important they are when we make decisions. And it's just relating as you work your way. And I was chatting with a young person who's now a cashier and doing a gap year traveling Europe. He remembers when I came to Journey Middle School and had talked to him. And then even at the capstone, when I was there, I remembered coming into Municipal Hall and seeing the difference. So the work we're doing, although it takes time, is very relevant to the generations that are coming up behind us. They feel safe on the roads. They feel safe crossing them and are easily navigating. And many now on their own are meeting up at the library from different schools to connect with their friends who may go to different school or be homeschooling. So these are all important things that we're doing and very relevant to them. Last week, was it last week? I was at Royal Roads University. So I've presented there in the past. I was invited back again. There was international students visiting up from Mexico. And again, talking about my life as an elected official and how that's evolved. So it's, you know, how much I love screens of text, of PowerPoint. It's all just pictures. So you're all there with me because I had a picture of all of you who we work with and what that looks like and just how my life has evolved and the different leadership journeys that I've been on and how that's changed over these years. So those are a few pieces. Our CAO and I were at a major crime symposium in Langford. This was talking about how we've been advocating for inclusion into the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit. And my takeaway was that there was a package coming to us like imminently on what our participation would look like. I haven't received it yet. And Rachel and I are checking because this is a big piece for us. It's a funding element and it's just, we need to know so we can plan and prepare. This is an important piece to us as a growing community, but we also need to continue growing our police complement and finding the more we know in advance, the more we can better prepare for these pieces, as you know. Thanks to Mr. Bohemier and the crew down at the wastewater plants. I was hoping for a packed session day there, but unfortunately not. Which means that folks are probably unaware of what happens when they flush their toilets, but the kids know. Those that have toured the plant before and they think about these things, as well as our mayor for the day. So Tom Lewis was the recipient. We had a great day together. And he's very interested in local government, which is wonderful to see. Also a graduate here from EMCS and has now made his way back to Sooke, and it's just great to see that return and that talent and another community builder out there. In addition to the Victory in Europe Day, I was back at the Legion again on Saturday for the memorial for the fallen paratroopers. And this is where tragic training exercise ended up in 9 lives lost. Could have been in the Ottawa River due to high winds that blew several off course. One of the survivors was present and was with us that day. And that was sort of out of Petawawa or Petawawa, Peterborough, I believe. Yeah. So it was an interesting piece of history. And every time we go to these events, I learned something new, and I think that's really important to always remember. Interestingly, when I was down in California, I stayed in Los Angeles, very busy city. I was explaining to my son and his friend there that all of Canada can fit into California population-wise, and LA itself is a very big city. 12 lanes of traffic, freeway, 6 in each direction. It was 7:30 at night. We weren't even going over 15K an hour. So when you talk about needing more lanes, and my friend who's been there forever is like, you're all just going to fill up. So you need other modes of transportation. Bike lanes are starting to be constructed. I was probably one of the only, or we were the only pedestrians actually walking anywhere. But she did share with me that they are advancing the subway line. It took only 30 years of negotiation to get it through Beverly Hills. There is a condition though that the stops are before and after and not in the middle. But it seemingly is going through there, so that'll be interesting. And then for nostalgia, it made me watch that movie Volcano, because that was the tar pits of La Brea that exploded when they were doing the subway, but it sort of reminded me of what an impact of an earthquake or a devastating seismic event would look like. So when I hear from folks about the need to drive out, having family in Japan that survived the big Kobe quake of 95 and the like, I'm like, where are you driving to when all the infrastructure fails? And I don't want to be an alarmist, but the need to be prepared at home is very important. The transportation session, more to come on that. Again, our students will be out in the community. Field trips are planned. Some will be walking to the museum, to Broomhill Park, as well as trips to Whiff and Spit and also Woodside Farm. So these are exciting things that our young people will be enjoying and celebrating in our community. The South Island Reconciliation Advisory Committee met earlier today in Chambers, so delighted to be a part of that group as well. I'll just share in Vegas, by the way, you not only pay all the hotel and accommodation taxes and everything else, but when you check in, you also pay a $50 per day US resort fee. You don't pay it, you don't check in, and they're all doing it. So what do you do in addition to everything else? So it's just something that the hotel tax is like almost nothing in comparison to that. And then as for next week, I will be off to Calgary, June 2nd to 10th. I'm going a little bit early. It's my hometown to connect with some family there. And then I'll join up with the rest of you for FCM. So again, I won't be at the meeting next week. I'll be with my aunt and uncle and doing some other things with my family. So again, thanks to everyone for covering off as these meetings come up. And I appreciate everyone for what you are doing. So on that note, I think that covers all these things. So thank you. I will call for a rise and report. Yes, there's always something. And this is just a rise and report that at the April 8th, 2024 in-camera meeting, council made the following resolution. That council directs staff to fund an additional 2.5% wage increase to all current QP staff effective January 1st, 2024. And a 2% wage increase to QP staff effective January 1st, 2025. So that's a rise and report from previous meeting. And now I will call for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Stay safe, everyone. All those in favor. And that's carried unanimously. Good night.